Hello. Oh,
Hello, Katara. So,
Hello. Just
yeah,
I can hear you guys. I'm just setting up things on my side in terms of making sure it looks okay on stream.
yeah, okay. I think
yeah.
also you're probably using your webcam mic. I think so. But that being said, let's start it off. So, welcome everybody for joining again. Fluff for joining us, as well as Katarana. Usually we do this with 4 people. But we can also invite some guests on. This show is called Lip Praxis, and basically we talk about like things more of in like a constructive way. We talk about taxation, we talk about geopolitics, and we generally talk about like anything related to a
Hey
topic
guys,
that
I'm
we
just
find interesting.
trying
So
to set
the
this
people
up.
from the panel pick out like a topic, and this week's topic was picked out by Elysium. So how we going to do this today is like basically, Elysium is going to introduce the topic, and then he pretty much can make like an opening statement or what he like wants to specifically talk about around this topic, and then we get opening statements for basically for everyone. And considered that Fluff is from the Dominican Republic. That's right, or his parents and his family.
nice.
My dad is born and raised in the Dominican Republic all his life.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So consider that after Elysium, I will give it to Fluff, and then we can see who wants to take it next. So Elysium, please introduce your topic, and then we can go from there. What you wanna exactly talk about?
Guys, I'm still
Okay.
here. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just
so
trying to fix this.
Haiti and the Dominican Republic occupy the same island in the Caribbean, and I've often heard them both brought up in different conversations as like Haiti is an example of one of the poorest countries in the Caribbean, and the Dominican Republic is an example of one of the fastest growing and wealthiest countries in the Caribbean, outside of like depends if you count like the United States and Mexico and that, but like of the islands. So they occupy the same landmass, and there's a vast disparity between the outcomes that have happened. So I've always been curious to do a 2-part geopolitical look at them of like how did this disparity come about? How did one do seemingly so well and one do seemingly so poor? And what are like the geopolitical positions or like interests of each now, given those outcomes? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay, and do you wanna have like an opening statement? What you wanna talk about, like specific, consider to
Yeah.
sum the topic up? But
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, looking into it from my take, the part that I really honed in on was there's like the bunch of the colonial history in both, but post 1940, America occupies both of these locations following the end of the World War II, and is supporting like anti-communist governments in both. And it looks like from this is like a kind of very similar point. From that 1940 point onward, they have very different outcomes from those two different governments, and that was where I think the major differences are lying, as my understanding of the situation.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's hand it over to Fluff.
Hi there, I'm Fluff. So it is talked about in a really weird way. With the first to talk about how like what brought your attention to it, which is the rhetoric that surrounds the Dominican Republic and Haiti. It would be silly to not say, in my opinion, that Haiti gets talked about in that way because
we're having a panel right now talking about
it tends to be a
the two
very
different
easy
countries.
thing to
Let me
pick
just
on.
change-
Like, look at this country that's so
Let me just change the name of
clearly
the stream.
like this Western country that's so clearly full of pure African descent and have historically like shirked off like Western influence or imperialist influence as much as possible. And so it's like an easy target for people with an agenda to kind of talk about in that way, especially like 2008 Haiti earthquake type stuff. It tends to be used as a political way.
There you go. I changed.
In regards to the 1940s, when you talk about American influence, luckily I graduated from a college that has its own Dominican studies course, like on Dominican Studies wing. It has literally an entire
Nice.
library for solely Dominican Studies. And so it was really easy to find information on this exact topic. You have to understand Dominican Republic has an incredibly complicated interaction with blackness. And that starts from even
That shit's
in the
so fucking.
1820s.
That's so true.
Dominican Republic, the people in Dominican
Dominicans do
have
not
never
consider themselves
identified
black.
as African ever.
It's really weird. I don't.
And it's almost always been far more important about focusing on nationality. For example, slavery was abolished in 1795, restated by Napoleon, and then in 1822, Dominican Republic gets taken over by Haiti, and then they fight a war for independence and eventually get freedom from Haiti, which slavery was still illegal that entire time, and that was retained. But you'll notice during that entire time, eventually towards the 1900s, Western countries start to get in, and Dominicans realize, because there's still rich land plantation owners in Dominican Republic, there's a lot of them, and they realize if we want to keep our money, we have to play ball with the big boys. We have to listen to what all those countries want, and they're like, we want cheap labor, and Dominicans are like, we're not doing this. And Dominican Republic, up to this point, and even now, is compromised of like mostly black people and mulattoes, which is just like a mix. It's like if you took Africans, Taino, European Spanish, and put them and West Indians and put them all in a blender, and you're like, well, I have no idea who's who anymore. I don't know. You can't find your ancestry. And so they refused to do that labor at that point because it was just so clearly like it was just the next level of industrial slave labor. And so Haitians started to get imported as immigrant labor. And so you have this influence of you need cheap, basically immigrant labor, and we all know how that tends to work out when the immigrants start to come in for cheap labor, how that starts to be used as a proxy. And then you also have this idea of you have racist America coming in trying to involve their politics, and they're like, I don't know if we want to work with you. You guys look, you're all pretty brown. They're like, whoa, buddy, we're not brown. We're Dominican. We're this. You don't need to worry about any of that. And so like they let the racism of like bigger countries slide, that influence. They don't really mind it because it's like whatever. It doesn't affect us that much. And so then you get to the 1940s, which I'm gonna try to speed up. Sorry, I just felt like all this is really important contextually.
That's cool.
America's like, hey, communism bad. You guys have any people that hate communism? And eventually we get a dictator named Trujillo who's like, I think communism's bad. And they're like, cool, one fascist dictator coming up. And so Dominican Republic gets where the racism really starts to actually matter, and where he basically genocides all the Haitian immigrants that are inside of Dominican Republic. It's horrendous. They deport them. They murder them.
Dominicans still treat Haitians.
There was a way of like they would make you say a Spanish word, and if you couldn't say it right, they knew you were Haitian, and they would kill you on the spot, or they would hurt you. And that was up until like the 1980s, and so America's racial like topics, the way it talks about race, has never fit well into Dominican Republic, and so it's a very unique and complicated dynamic between the two.
Okay, thank you very much. Usually I would like interrupt somebody if they were to hold that long of a speech, but consider you did like Dominican studies, and your family is from there, I think it's fair enough to let you have this one. So let's go to Senpai Chow.
Yeah, so according to the research that I've done when comparing the Dominican Republic and Haiti when it comes to the differing economic outcomes, I found that there is a stark difference in the environmental policies that both of them passed. So regarding the environment, one of like the more well-known pictures comparing the Dominican Republic and Haiti is that border where you have the forest on the Dominican Republic, and it's just
Okay, really
barren
weird
land
sidebar, guys,
on
but
the
the
Haitian side.
CIA
It's
assassinated
very stark.
Dominican Republic's
It's
dictator.
very apparent. And
Usually if
so then
they're assassinating your dictator, that means
Haiti
your
has
dictator's
really
doing
like
something right.
experienced
Very weird.
massive deforestation in comparison to the Dominican Republic, and I would attribute that to the differing environmental policies that both of them have, or really Haiti's lack thereof, because they didn't have any until later on. And
Mm,
despite
this is a bit
both
wrong.
of these countries having dictators running their governments, the Dominican Republic's dictator did enact some environmental policies that did protect watersheds, that banned cutting down trees, and things like that. Another huge thing would be the incentivizing people to not use wood for, like, saying fuel or cooking. Instead,
There you go.
they wanted to incentivize using gas for their stoves, etc., etc. So that is what I would attribute to, especially because in both of these countries, them being developing countries, not industrial countries, their economies are agrarian, they're agricultural. So forestation, soil degradation, and how they react, what their relationship is with their environment is very important to then their economy and then their different economic outcomes.
Okay, and let's go to name up next.
All right. I've focused on something pretty similar, except rather than the environmental issues, what struck me is that when comparing the history of what dictator like the Duvalier did compared to Trujillo, is that it seemed to me that even though both were corrupt, bloody, and oppressive dictators, Trujillo did not just on the environmental side. He in general enacted a lot more modernization of the country's infrastructure and spending on things that we would consider just long-term investment in a country. And I would argue that that has probably partially borne fruits for Haiti as a country. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, and last but not least, Katarana.
Just to check, are we talking strictly about just environmental policies here, or like?
No.
Because yes.
No, you can go past
No.
that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just to start, when it comes to the deforestation of Haiti, a lot of the deforestation took place in the 90s, and it was a direct result of the infiltration of the U.S. within Haitian policy, Haitian politics. We had an embargo and sanctions put on us in terms of gasoline. So deforestation was the way that people were going to cook their food during that time. Of course, there could be some form of policies against deforestation, but what's going to be your priority when it's either we protect the trees or make sure that like people within our country are able to eat or keep the lights on? And since America decided keeping the lights on via other methods wasn't going to be condoned by them, this was the method that we had to go through. Unfortunately, like, these types of policies are really secondary when you already have a country that's in turmoil. You don't care too much about how the environment is going to look or how aesthetic your country is on a global scale when you have 50% of people are at risk of starving every year. Like, these are just secondary issues. But outside of that, there's there was a big difference in the 60s or leading up to the 60s as how dictators ran the country. And one set of dictators used it to build up the country via like an iron fist and, killing off people, which of course is not great. But another one decided that they're going to keep their power by getting rid of other Haitian people, and completely taking our educational system to the shitter. As Fluff was saying, the dictator of Dominican Republic got rid of Haitians, and the dictator of Haiti also got rid of Haitians. So at the end of the day, the only side that was really hurting a lot was Haiti. So yeah, I guess our history is very intertwined, and then suddenly it diverges worse than any type of lens I've ever seen in my life. And that's just really product of what recent history politicians' priorities were, and how involved other governments decided to get into one side versus the other.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So floor is open. Senpai Chai, do you want to respond to the environmental changes and the stuff that Katarana brought up?
So
Well,
kind of,
I don't deny that sanctions don't play a role in this whole thing. So yeah, but I am quickly looking up whether or not the sanctions do affect gasoline.
Okay, so
really quickly, if
when you
there
do
is a
that-
source, I would like to look at that.
when you do that at Elysium, you wanted to say something. I know.
Yeah, I think on top of the environmental stuff is that
Are you being
or
CIA?
calling both these economies agrarian holds true for a while, but I think we see like a shift. The Dominican Republic has successfully shifted its economy to a service economy for the majority of its like growth, while Haiti is still a purely agrarian economy, and I think that accounts for a lot of differences too. So there, like one of these elements is it seems that Dominican Republic has more natural resources, has like a huge gold mine, which gives a massive boost to its GDP, and other minerals for manufacturing to help boost that. So like it was able to, during this time period, transfer out from being just agrarian, whereas Haiti is still, as far as I'm aware of its economy, is like completely and entirely dominated by crops.
Yeah, Elysium. So I don't disagree with you. In fact, you're probably very correct that Dominican Republic's economy is more service-based than Haiti's, and that's why currently they're outputting more, one could say. But we also have to remember that economic development, we don't just have to look at what happens now and then say, oh, it's better because of what happens now. Economic development
No.
occurs over a large period of time. And so then when I'm referring to these policies, or when, say, Naaman is going to be referring to the modernization policies, that was happening in like the 60s.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
referring to.
yeah,
So
so like
if you
here's the thing
have,
is that like the Dominican Republic and Haiti, they both started out as agrarian policies. What we're saying is that the Dominican Republic imposed policies very early on, earlier than Haiti, that would then contribute to how it got to its current situation now. Okay.
so if I can cut in here for a little bit.
Yes, sure.
Well, I appreciate the about the focus on the what happened. I think what really needs to be focused on, to really get what's going on, and I think Kat was trying to get at that, is that why it happened. Dominican Republic economically has diverged the very day it came out the box, like since the 1840s, from Haiti, and the reason is that I'll be like super straight about it, is that Dominican Republic wasn't all just black people, and they could pass off as having some white. They still had light-skinned landowners, and so Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, America were all willing to work with Haiti. We're all willing to work with Dominican Republic, as long as Dominican Republic never started talking about like this. There's multiple times like where famous politicians, even like John C. Calhoun in 1844, was like, you guys aren't gonna get, start identifying as black and get all, uppity, right? Like, you guys aren't gonna like start demanding stuff, are you? And it was very clear that like even he in 1844 was so confused by why Dominicans just didn't want to identify as black, and it's because that's how they got access to all those economic opportunities, that all those giant superpowers were super happy to come in and like take advantage of Dominican resources and use it, because there were still light-skinned landowners that they could happily identify with. And if you see, like, as you look at Dominican history, it's just so much of those decisions are made in that same vein of like just very capitalistic decisions. And Trujillo was just another one of those people that was happy to throw Haitians under the bus, or that were living there, because Dominican Republic's always been willing to do this kind of the sleaziest or the most advantageous thing it can do.
Okay, let's throw it over to Kat and English.
Yeah, so and this is even still an issue now because there are people not even that would be considered mestizo or mulatto, people that like if they were to move to America, no one would think that they're anything but black, and they refuse to identify as black, as Dominicans. They could be as basically as black as like a non-mixed Haitian is, and they're like, I'm not black, I'm Dominican. And I think that generally just it from the inception of both of these countries starting off as being independent nations, one was consistently hamstringed, whereas the other was basically allowed to go ahead and do as they please. With Haiti, we had blockades completely surrounding the country, and in exchange for having the blockades removed, we had to pay what is now equivalent to $28 billion in today's currency to France to pay them back for losing a war for our freedom. And these were debts that Haiti was still paying to France until the 40s. And this has already started off the country out in a bad foot, whereas another country is basically like, oh, you guys aren't black? Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll trade with you.
Kat, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off if I did, but I think your mic is cutting out.
Oh,
does anybody else get that?
Is it?
Yeah, a little bit. But
is it really bad or?
No, it's not insanely bad, but.
Okay, wait one sec.
It's I just want to let you know if you want to fix it.
Yeah, it's probably push to talk. One sec. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully that's better. Yeah, so did you miss anything of what I was saying, or did you like?
No, it was a little bit choppy, but
okay.
Yeah, so the French got we got a French person on here, so name, go ahead, defend yourself. No, just kidding.
I'm not going to defend France's colonialism. It's France did not treat Haiti well. There's nothing to defend there. Katarana is absolutely right. There's I didn't know the specifics about the war reparations, but like that's absolute bullshit.
I mean, but this is very consistent whenever it comes to like France. I don't know. It's honestly like a luck of the draw for some reason. As to, man, I really hope I get colonized by one of the people that aren't absolute pieces of shit. And when it comes to France, like it's like if you get France, you're basically fucked. Like even as
there's Belgium.
Well, and those are $1.99 French people. So like, yeah, I mean,
Damn.
Wow. Also, they didn't get colonized by the Belgian. They got colonized by the Belgian king himself.
What you fucking do?
It was his personal property. It wasn't from Belgium. So
God.
there you go. To set the record straight.
Yeah.
Just,
we're like, as to contrast, during that same time, the Dominican Republic was literally begging, because like they didn't want to get taken over by Haiti or Spain again, and so they're like, America, will you please annex us? Like they literally were asking. I think they even asked France. Yeah, they even asked France, like, please take us over. Like we don't want like Haiti to come over and wreck our, like, take over again. We don't want other people to come and take over. We know if we come with you, you won't change shit. Like you'll let things stay the way they are.
Okay.
So in this vein, something that I had trouble finding was like any sort of economic comparison before like 1940, and like looking at the 1940s, they seem to be relatively similar evaluations of economies during this time period. When we're talking like in the 1800s, was like the Dominican Republic massively better off than Haiti? being able to play a game with trade and
Yeah, because Dominican Republic up to that point, like agrarian wise, it was so wealthy because just as you can talk about, like Dominican Republic does have advantages in sugarcane like land. Like the sugarcane was just off the charts. It was vulnerable to however sugar was in the markets, but it was when it started to get bad and American companies entered the United States. It was like, if you guys want to keep making money, you never give us good enough labor. And so Dominican Republic was so wealthy to the point where the government of Dominican Republic was importing West Indians to do basically slave labor. They got to it really early, and that's why you can see America working so heavily economically with them even as early as the 1820s.
Yeah, and I guess we'd say that part of the reason why Haiti may be hampered is because it's still in the agrarian form of economy as opposed to service. But up during the time of which France had ownership over Haiti, it was their wealthiest colony. Just because you're having a goods-based economy, or at least an agricultural good-based economy, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to set you to a life of poverty, or your country's always going to be poor. And in the 40s, Haiti, 40s to 80s, Haiti was a place which was a bit more of a service based country. Just like everybody runs over to Punta Cana or Santo Domingo for vacation, Haiti was the same thing for Westerners as well. So it's not that Haiti just doesn't have anything that the Dominican Republic has, because keep in mind, it's the same land, right? And if it's the same land, it has mostly the same resources. It's not like America where it spans from 4,000 miles across. It's 500 miles or something. It's really not differing all that much across one end to the other. So just because it's making its money in this type of way, and you're like, oh, well, Dominican Republic has gold repositories or deposits. Well, there's more educated people able to actually extract the resources in Dominican Republic and find these deposits, as opposed to Haiti, where we have massive brain drain. So perhaps we also have the same types of resources, just nobody can tap into it, because everybody I know and everybody I've ever known, the second they get a degree, finish high school to get a degree, they fuck off from Haiti. No one stays there anymore.
Okay.
Katarana, I love that you mentioned the land thing, because Elysium was kind of talking about it before, and I didn't know how to put it in, but now you're giving me the opportunity. Fucking awesome. So, basically, yes, the Dominican Republic and Haiti, they're on the same island, but I wouldn't say that the land is the same, or at least according to what I've read. Apparently, the Dominican Republic is less mountainous, and therefore that's better for agriculture. And since it's on the east side of the island, it therefore gets more rainfall, apparently, which then is better for agriculture. Another little tidbit of information that I found while researching was that in the very early stages, Haiti was actually producing more agriculturally, but I think that's attributed to what the Dominican Republic was doing in trying to slow down the agriculture output so that it doesn't deforest, or it doesn't cause soil degradation, it doesn't run the watersheds dry and things like that. Now, to your point of the brain drain, I have no idea that was occurring, but I know that it does occur in developing countries. Whenever people do get degrees, they go to an industrialized country and then they stay there. But then what usually then happens afterwards is it creates a remittance economy. And I'm not sure what's the relationship with Haiti and a remittance economy. Remittances are when people from a country, they leave, they earn money outside of that country, but then they send money back to their families and stuff, for people who don't know,
for the
chat and stuff.
Yeah, so for the groups of people that I'm referring to, there is no necessity to send money back. So, the majority of people that aren't going to private school in Haiti will not be able to make it out of the country. We don't really do very much student visas for people whose parents make like less than a certain amount, and most people do not make that amount within Haiti. So the people that I'm referring to were like people that I went to high school with, and nobody is sending money back because their family doesn't need it, but they sure as hell are not going back to Haiti. Everybody that I know that graduated with me in high school does not live in Haiti anymore.
Okay.
So it's like their extended families are also out of Haiti, is what you're saying.
Their extended family, but it's like everybody I'm referring to are like 1%ers. So like their family doesn't need money, and all their family and extended family are also 1%ers. So nobody else needs money.
Yeah, which still causes problems, because then like in a world in which they did stay in Haiti, they could help out in government, they could help out in business and stuff like that, and maybe there's like some potential there, but brain drain.
Yeah.
Elysium?
No.
No,
Yes.
like one of the things that I read about was like because we talked a bit about the land, is also that IIT was like basically having like monoculture farms, which was pretty devastating for the lands overall, compared to what the Dominican Republic did. So uh, maybe that's like one of these things that we can say the land is the same, but it isn't actually, because of the fact that the French like basically did this monoculture thing over and over, and that ends up like pretty bad for the soil. So,
Yeah.
name. Do you want to make an excuse for that?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to defend. I'm not going to defend that either.
You putting him on the spot.
Look, hey, look.
What do you have to
Honestly,
say about this?
I just-
All of France.
It's really dumb, especially if you consider the fact that the France in the Middle Ages already like French serfs and like the agriculture. It was known that you should rotate crops. There was a traditional rotation of crops on already in the Middle Ages on every single French farm. So yeah, there was no excuse.
Yeah, I think you get elements of like extraction and colonialism where those things weren't.
Yeah, just
yes.
short-term profits.
Yes, but I do also want to mention that it also has something to do with poverty as well. So, from one of the research pieces that I read before this, they looked at a reserve and saw like where was the deforestation happening more. And one of the factors was, what was the tenure? Was it obtained legally? Was it obtained illegally? Was it sharecropping? Was it not sharecropping? They did it by income and stuff like that, and they found that land that was obtained illegally was more so had higher higher levels of deforestation. And this is just like a correlation, but the hypothesis to explaining that is that when you are impoverished, or when you think that your land is there for temporary use, such as sharecropping. Do people know what sharecropping is? It's another like agricultural technique.
You can explain it.
Sharecropping is when there's a landowner, but they allow other people to work on that land for a share of the profits. And so then the workers, this is the hypothesis of the sharecropping, is that the workers think that me using this land for agriculture is temporary. It's also not mine. So there are really no consequences long term for me overusing this land and therefore causing soil degradation, et cetera, deforestation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then we also have to include, or like think about, what would be the incentives of the impoverished for saying like going down, or like continuing this vicious cycle of overusing soil.
Hmm.
Not saying that it's the same as what the colonial incentive is. because that's
Overstated problem? What do you mean by that, Marco?
that's like
One other
top
unique,
down. It's dangerous.
Right, one
Also,
other unique
is everybody doing okay?
thing I can add
Thank
to
you, by
this
the way,
is that
for
my
coming
family,
by.
not by my doing, so I don't take pride in anything, is one of the wealthiest families in Dominican Republic, and so I've experienced what it's like to be vastly wealthy in Dominican Republic, and I've seen what the poorest people in Dominican Republic look like. And to tell you that like a rich person in Dominican Republic lives basically like somebody does in Malibu, and I'm talking even like 20 years ago, like they lived like that. A poor person in the Dominican Republic lives like the most whatever, like what is it called? Like there's a term for like when documentarians deliberately try to make stuff look terrible.
Yeah.
Like whatever you've seen of that, people living like that. I've seen naked kids coming out of like huts that are built on top of each other on hills, trying to sell me like $30 or like trying to sell me eggs. I've seen what how the poorest people in the Dominican Republic live, and it's gotten recently over the years it's gotten better, but I've seen it. Most of the roads have just like finished that like disconnected a huge proportion of the rural population. My dad grew up in the rural area, so I happened to spend a lot of time there. I've seen like how the most rural live, where they basically have to be self-sustaining. They have no connection to actual like jobs or outside. They rely on like just what the richest people will give them.
If you have time later, perhaps we can talk about this afterwards.
17% of Dominican Republic's GDP is based on tourism, which is I'm sure anyone like knows economy will know that that's a very large amount.
What was the percentage?
17%.
Okay.
And so it's I hope the conversation doesn't turn into like a who made the better decisions kind of thing, when really, like, in my opinion, it's really about Dominican Republic was willing to get dirty and like be like, all right, you racist rich people, like you racist rich countries, just do what you want to us, and we'll play the Game of Thrones. Versus Haiti really didn't even get an opportunity to even like be a character in it.
When you say like do what you want to us, what are you referring to?
You can't. Well, for like example, in the early 1920s, companies started to take over plantation farms in Dominican Republic, and they didn't pay like taxes. None of that money that they did went to Dominican Republic. Like all that money just went back to America. It was literally just American companies just leeching off plantation stuff, and they're like, we need people to work for our plantations. And the Dominicans were like, we're not doing it. Like, we've seen how terrible that is. And so, like, all right, we'll let the Haitians do it. Like, we'll make the Haitian immigrants do it. And it's always been, like, kind of just, they don't resist the imperialism or, like, the racism that comes with it. Like, there's so many instances of, like, leaders in the Dominican Republic literally, like, having a conversation with, like, a politician. And they're like, they're very strictly talking about like, are you sure you guys are you okay with all this racism? Like, are you okay? Like, I'm a little worried about how black your country is. And they're like, no, you never need to worry about that here. You'll never have to worry about like race ever mattering here. And like race, like Klans members like would come to the Dominican Republic and like give speeches, and nobody would care. Nobody would bat an eye.
And we don't help you. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Katarina.
Yeah, we don't help each other at all. Like, there's always issues of doing mass deportations. Like once these plantations or plots of land no longer need Haitians, even if Haitians want to stay and continue helping learn Spanish, etc., they like Dominicans will deport Haitians so fucking fast. Like they do not want Haitians over in the country. And it's generally like really, I guess, I wouldn't say hurtful, but yeah, kind of hurtful considering that we basically shared the same land, we shared the same history up until more recently. But Dominicans, like there's just, and perhaps it's like some leftover from like 1822 shit, but I don't know. It's really weird. Dominicans like just do not like Haitian people. And like they just deport all the time. Like a cousin of mine was getting married in the DR, and a couple of my cousins drove over the border to get there. they were robbed at gunpoint by like border patrol because they were Haitian. Like there's just like this weird vitriol, and it's like, I mean, for honestly, like I would say, like, if we do better, they do better, but perhaps that's not the case. But it's just so strange to like have a country in which like in all senses of the word are so linked, and yet like there's just this absolute like hatred of like the idea of being black and the idea of Haitians being there.
Okay, Nate.
I wanted to add, since we're on the subject of labor practices, it was pretty shocking to me that to see that to this day the Dominican
Over
Republic
voice like
is
in our server.
is being called out for up to 1% of its population is considered under modern day slavery within plantations. There's the child labor issues. There are really problematic practices that if they're perpetuated to this day, then obviously it wasn't better. It wasn't better years ago. It could have only been worse. And that ties into obviously to like the racial context and motivations that you're talking about.
Well, child slavery is just generally an issue like throughout this island through and through. Child slavery is an issue that like we deal with in Haiti as well. But like I'm pretty sure it's worse over on our end. It's 1 in every 15 children born in Haiti will be born into slavery. But I mean, yeah, I guess for the country that's supposed to be more developed, I would hope that some of these things would be worked on. But as I said, like we're a lot more alike than we're not alike. The only thing that changes us is economics, essentially. But it's the same people.
With the
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Go. No, you're good.
I just wanted to add, it's not much of a political observation, but there's something weirdly akin to like individual psychology with the whole having a neighbor you're very similar to, but with only minute differences, and you just fucking hate them. You're gonna be spiteful towards them. You're gonna be ready to hurt yourself in order to hurt them. You're not gonna work together. You're gonna try to one up each other. There's something very like perverse and human in the behavior you're describing. I find.
Yeah, I just want to say though.
Identity.
I just want to say though, like it's not like Haitians are completely like scot-free when it comes to this as well. We just don't really have the power that like that Dominicans have over us. Haitians need to go to the Dominican Republic to like get agricultural jobs or any other form of jobs, whereas Dominicans aren't really fighting at the border to get in. But there's just a general thing that's said amongst Haitians where, oh, the only Dominicans here are prostitutes and hairdressers. Like, that's all Dominicans do in Haiti. And, like, yeah, Dominicans and Haitians don't like Dominicans anymore. I guess one just needs the other, and thus we will sit there and deal with it, whereas the other party doesn't need us.
Elysium?
Okay. Like we're getting more into like the current geopolitics, and the comparison that I kind of
No
kept
problem,
thinking of, I
Marco.
didn't have like any of much of the racial components to this, but
We could talk at some point.
from like a working together standpoint, the border situation in some ways reminded me of like North and South Korea. In that once you have such a disparity between the two, the only way that I ever see like a unification or a modernization working out is if the developed one is willing to invest in the other one. So like in the modern geopolitics, especially with the border, the stuff I was looking at is just basically how Dominican Republic has a very protected border and continues to try to control immigration. Until Dominican Republic, the initiatives on them to invest in Haiti. Until they do that, it's I don't see any big development coming out of Haiti or like the situation drastically changing. If that makes sense.
Sorry, I just remembered something really huge. So actually, Dominican Republic had nearly as much debt as Haiti at one point. Actually, a shit ton of debt. It's just the Dominican Republic had sucked up to America so hard that Theodore Roosevelt was like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. All right, the only people that Dominican Republic's make like dealing with money to is us. We're their bank. We handle all of this now. Like, we control all of this money flow, and so America was able to reduce that debt by an extremely significant margin because of that. And so basically, because of that, like, Dominican Republic's literally been called America's backyard for like 60 plus years. And it's because America's as close to being a territory or a state as it could be. Like, it's been something very well known. Like my family makes money through like selling expensive cars that nobody in that area can afford. It's something that either rich people in the Dominican Republic come for, like the richest, or people in America come to buy to avoid taxes. Like, it's always been that kind of area. Like, where that's the easiest way to make money. Like, if you're a big company in the Dominican Republic, you did it by scamming people. Like, my family once told me like how they used to, before like they changed the law, that they would they would sell their cars with the wheels on the wrong side, so they had to go to another place to get it like fixed to put the wheel on the correct side, so they could actually drive the cars.
Wait, who did the DR owe money to?
I can't remember.
Okay. Well,
I would assume Spain.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Okay. I mean, so the thing that's like, I guess even more really irritating for me is we have the same exact thing in Haiti. We have a Porsche shop. There should not be a fucking Porsche shop in Haiti. But nonetheless, it's there and it's operating. But I would say that I don't think it really requires not foreign investment, but Dominican Republic investment for Haiti to become a more well-to-do country. With the amount of money that Haiti received in foreign aid after the earthquake, that was more than enough to really like fix a lot of infrastructural issues. But what's the point of forking over money to a country in which like is not handling it properly, money gets embezzled, etc. Like $13.5 billion, that's the entire GDP of Haiti. Like, get somebody going and giving you the entire GDP of your country to fix your country, it should be fixed. So unless, Dominican Republic's going to come over and like breathe on the necks of the people as they were to invest into the country, it's essentially going to be the same exact issue. I mean, we're going to see the same thing happen right now with the most recent earthquake. Foreign aid is going through. Obviously, it's not as spicy as the Port-au-Prince one because that was, I don't know, 2010 was a really slow news year, I guess, but nothing's going to happen there either, etc. It's just in a really poor political cycle that's destined for failure for some reason. And yes.
Do you not consider foreign aid as something that is like not domestic?
Sorry, what do you mean by that? Foreign aid, not domestic?
If I didn't hear you correctly, I think you said something along the lines of Haiti doesn't need like any outside help in order for it to develop, modernize, to be a better to do country.
No, so what I'm saying is that I don't think that's the answer because even with foreign help in the past, it has not gone towards the causes of which we have invested. When people gave all the money worth of aid to Haiti in 2010, $13.5 billion did not go back into Haiti's infrastructure. So we can throw as much aid into the country as possible, but unless you're fixing all these different issues such as like corruption, such as making sure that like the contracts that you're spending money on is actually done by the people in that country, making sure that there are less tax loopholes, making sure that your president isn't consistently embezzling, then it doesn't matter how much money you put in, because clearly $13.5 billion wasn't the answer. Do we need to put in $200 billion just in hopes that $2 billion of it ends up actually getting in? Because last time hardly any of it got in.
I could actually add to that.
Go.
I could actually add to that. So when studying when foreign aid does work, apparently if you just give money and you don't really monitor it, you don't really ask for anything back, there's like no strings attached, then it usually goes somewhere that it wasn't intended for. So there are certain factors that can be accomplished that makes foreign aid more likely to achieve its intended goals than not. But you were talking about corruption, eliminating tax loopholes, and all this stuff. It sounds to me that like you're in favor of government reform. So then, how would that happen?
100%. I'm in favor of government reform within Haiti. Our government is essentially non-functional. I mean, last time I went to Haiti in 2019, there was a major protest on the way to me trying to get to the grocery store because the government workers hadn't been paid for 8 weeks. Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
How are you?
So then, like, would you be okay if the foreign aid was attached to a reforms of the government?
I mean that kind of sounds a little bit too much like a World Bank situation, you know, when we're like, I'll give you this money, but in exchange you must fix this very specific issue, which I don't think I don't think government restructuring as dictated by other parties is good. I think there generally needs to be a lot more investment into education of the country, considering that it's like at a 50% illiteracy rate or something, so that people can actually like read the platforms of the people that are running for president, so that they could say, oh, okay, are these the things that you want to fix? Yes, this is what I want. Because currently it's like, oh, my friend's voting for them, so I guess, yeah, I'll vote for them.
Well, foreign aid could affect a country's education policy and their system. The foreign aid could be used in order to improve that education system.
Yes, it could be done that way. I just don't really believe in any form of like benevolent, like extra, an outside power. I don't think anyone's going to be like, especially if it's coming directly from another country. No one's going to say, here's like $14 billion just to fix your education system. We don't want anything back. Okay, have fun. Like, because that's not what's going to happen. It's going to be in exchange for something. So what is it in exchange for? I guess I would have to see what it's in exchange for before I were to agree to foreign aid being good.
Name?
I just like to point out, it's something I wasn't sure about it, so I double checked. As far as the 2010 aid went, 99% of it never went into government hands. It was all handled by NGOs and private contractors. Meaning that if there was a misallocation, it was a misallocation because through those entities. I remember that the Médecins Sans Frontières, the Doctors Without Borders, there was a controversy because they actually made a public statement stating that they had enough money for this cause, that people should stop donating to them for this cause, and that if they have other money, they should donate it for like other causes, but that they could get more money. They wouldn't be able to spend it in useful ways in Haiti. I wonder how much of the like just looking at the number, I feel like is perhaps misrepresenting the what actually went on, because when an NGO, when a humanitarian NGO has some money to spend on, say, aid in a country that suffered a tragedy like Haiti in 2010, they'll have a specific plan on how they'll spend it. They'll maybe spend on medical supplies, they'll maybe spend on some rebuilding and infrastructure, but they'll usually have a pretty clear plan on what they're going to do, and they're going to stick to that plan. Whether it fits a long-term vision, what's best long-term for the country or not, is another question, right? I'm just saying that I'm not sure that really government corruption was necessarily the problem in that specific instance, though obviously from what I've read, it is a general problem in the country.
Yeah, it's a general problem in the country, but even let's say if 1% of it were to get through the hands of government, that 1% that got through the hands of government was still messed with. That's
okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's exactly 1%. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's exactly 1%, then yeah, 1% of that still had an issue. I mean, that's partially why Michel Martelly had to step down in 2016, was due to too many embezzlement scandals. So yeah. But I mean, yeah, of course it was also partially like NGOs using the donation money to fill up their operational costs before thinking about what people have actually donated money for. But I can tell you that, like, as of when I moved there in 2013, man, you tell me that there wasn't just an earthquake 2 days ago, I wouldn't have believed you. Like, it was 3 years later and it still looked like the exact same condition. So, I mean,
Yeah, so then my solution to that problem is to have strings attached to the foreign aid. And I understand that what's an important factor for you to
why
consider
is
whether or
Kobe
not you like
coaching?
foreign aid is whether or not what those strings are. So,
Yes, you can.
like,
I'll show you
I'm
how.
given this hypothetical, in the case that, like, the strings attached you were okay with, they were ethical, and they didn't cause any more problems, or they actually, there are less consequences to the strings attached than the benefits of the foreign aid and where it's going to go to. Would you otherwise be okay with that?
I mean, yes, in this theoretical, but honestly, like, I can create a lot of hypotheticals or theoreticals in which there's a situation that I find more ideal, but based
Yeah,
off
so then,
of
like, where do you draw the line then?
where do I draw the line? I mean, I'm not really sure what backroom deals look like, so I can't really say I'll draw a line because it's not a situation which I can say, well, in my experience, last time I had to argue with Hillary Clinton in a cigar room, this is what happened. But I can tell you that, like, last time, in 2010 or like a bit before, like 2011, there was the election with Preval. He was supposed to be ending up his term, and Preval had a conversation with Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton was like, if you don't let Michelle Martelly make it to the next round of the runoff elections, then we are going to withhold foreign aid from you. Kind of weird. Kind of weird, I would say. So if these are the kind of concessions that we're going to have to make is in exchange for you not doing democracy properly, we will give you money. Kind of weird.
Okay, Seth?
Yeah, so real quick, I wanted to expand upon what I had said earlier about the thing, about with Theodore Roosevelt, and also add on to kind of what Kat was saying, that so the name of it was called the Roosevelt Coralie. I actually linked it to you, Chinchilla, if you want to give it to the rest of the panel members. Basically what it did, it was on top of the Monroe document, and it was an executive order where basically Theodore Roosevelt said, nobody's allowed to take any territory from the Dominican Republic. Nobody can collect debts from Latin American countries allied with America, which include Panama and Dominican Republic. So no European powers were allowed at all to collect debts from Dominican Republic, and assume responsibility for custom house collections using 55% of receipts to pay outstanding obligations and turning over the remainder of for governmental purposes. What this basically meant was Dominican Republic sold its soul to not have to pay the debts anymore. America took over like almost complete fiscal responsibility for them and territorial responsibilities, and they signed like a mutual defense agreement. And America has been has corporate control over Dominican Republic since then.
If there wasn't like a race element to that, would that be considered selling your soul to you?
I didn't. When I said soul to soul, I didn't even think of the race element.
Okay, so you just economically that's selling your soul, you think? How is that selling your soul? I guess I don't quite understand that statement.
When you've basically allowed like a country to take sole responsibility for you and like just to have so much economic influence over you, you've kind of lost what is it called? Your agency.
Sovereignty?
Yeah, but this is during the spheres of influence. Only major powers have sovereignty. I mean, you can say that even now, right?
Yeah, well, when you're making, but this was the moment. I agree with you completely. Like, I'm not saying like there was a choice. Like, you're gonna have to pick somebody. But when you make the act of making that decision, like when you basically when you're selling the sovereignty, like you're making that decision. And I think the thing the reason why I point that out, right, is that I don't really think Haiti ever got a chance to Haiti never even got to like get to play that game, like to get to pick like who they get to sell to, like who gets to take them over, who gets to give them the best deal. And I think there's so many examples of bad deals, like where the person, like the lesser guy, has absolutely no benefit from it, that it's hard to like trust these deals. I like when I say sell your soul, I just mean like I just kind of mean like a Faustian bar, like something like where you know like those things like where a blues man goes and meets the devil at a train track so he can like play really well. I mean it like that. I'm not like attaching like America's awful. Like America was playing the politics game that 7 other countries were trying to do to Dominican Republic as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to distinguish like what's the difference between having an ally or having like or being a vassal and like selling your soul to you. Are like these all synonymous or not?
Becoming a so imagine I have made you the leader of Dominican Republic in this one instance, right? And you are signing the paper saying, all right, America's going to handle all of our fiscal responsibilities owed to other countries, and they're going to assume sole responsibility for protecting our territories. Like you've been raised in the Dominican Republic all your life, you're a proud Dominican, and you're signing on the sheet of paper like, all right, America is basically who runs that, like who has this much power, like we're extremely reliant. There's going to be a sense of like this sucks that you have to do this. Like when you basically hand over functional sovereignty or functional like when you capitulate yourself to a world power, there's a sense of losing like what you are in that sense. I don't like, maybe I'm trying to figure out like what you feel is problematic about the sell your soul phrase.
I like one thing that I wonder, Fluff, when you say that, like when you talk about the European Union,
I hate you.
You are not allowed as a member state to have like a certain type of deficit. That's why Italy is always like kind of struggling with the European Union. They rather have like a different way of doing economics. But I wouldn't say that is selling my soul just to have like
yeah, he's great.
Like
I should also add that when I talked about the plantations that made no money for Dominican Republic, this is when they started. Like this is when, like after this happened, after this was signed, this is when it happened. Like where it was basically just draining Dominican resources for American companies. Like this is right around the time when that really started to pick up heavily.
Okay.
Yeah, but didn't the Dominican Republic benefit from that?
Well,
they got security. They were able to get some money from those resources that were extracted, and that did affect them up to this day, to the point where they are better off than most other countries that the Dominican Republic was in similar situations a couple hundred years ago.
I don't really feel like we can call like taking advantage of a situation like beneficiary. Like I'm not saying like America shouldn't gain something from a deal, right?
No. I'm saying the Dominican Republic gained something from it.
But even if there's something that you gain that's advantageous, it doesn't necessarily make it like a good thing either.
Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time.
The ends don't justify the means. Like I can say that normatively, okay? Like gunboat diplomacy and those kinds of things are like pretty bad actions and coercive. They're threatening, they're violent, and all that stuff. But then, like, at the end of the day, I guess, like, yeah, the ends don't justify the means.
I mean, exactly.
So then, like, would you say that the Dominican Republic was like forced to agree with this? Because like it feels like to me that state leaders, at least like according to, because I have like international relations brain theory, and then like one of the priorities is security, is maintaining security. And if the United States
Dominican Republic had made this decision 50 years ago. And the Dominican Republic made that decision in the 1820s. Like it was made by wealthy plantation owners that were like, we'll do anything to keep what's going on. Yeah, they had already made this decision. This kind of decision was made easily 50 years prior to this. Like this was going to happen.
So Kat wanted
when did I say 50 years before?
No, wait. Kat wanted to say something.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, like, even if there's something to benefit from, like, yes, the ends don't justify the means. I mean, people make this argument sometimes when they're like, when they speak to Black Americans and they say, like, well, isn't this better than, like, where you would have been had we not, like, taken you? You would have still been in Africa. Great. Ends don't justify the means. Sure, my life is better. Would I prefer to have my culture back? Yeah, maybe. That might be something I would prefer.
Did the Dominican Republic lose their culture?
I'm making an analogy, not a... like
Okay.
yeah, they're not
I get
direct
it.
comparisons. Yeah. But I also want to say that like the U.S. just generally like it makes really crappy deals with people. Like the U.S. Negotiated this with Dominican Republic, but what the U.S. tried to negotiate with Haiti was, can you please go back into slavery? Like we'll make things better for you. But like the only types of trade like deals that the U.S. tried to make with Haiti was in exchange for you being in slavery again type deals. They were working with the French at some point, and yeah, they were making deals such as in exchange for you doing this, this, and this, we'll try to get you back Haiti. Like these were the types of deals. So like I don't really see like Haiti has always just kind of been put into this perpetual loop of just absolute like crap sandwiches, and it's like either we have to pay back our debt to people in exchange for like fighting for our freedom, or if we want the debt taken away altogether, then we can go back to chains again. And we can go ahead and reinstate presidents, but if we don't do it, then we're going to starve all of you on your country. And it's crappy. There's way too much interventionalism, and like I would never like fault a Haitian person for, or any type of Haitian leader saying no, I don't want to take any type of foreign aid, especially not if it comes with strings, because historically the strings have always been absolutely crappy. I mean, it's not like the Haitian people are particularly happy whenever these types of deals are struck out. When we went ahead and put Martelli in because U.S. said that we had to, or when we went ahead and put Jovenel Moise in because Martelli put him there. It's not like people in Haiti just sit there passively. Like there were like weeks that I wouldn't be able to go to school because people would be rioting in the streets and it was too like unsafe to go places. Like people aren't super passive about all of this different types of interventionalism, and we just don't want it anymore.
So
Wait, so you don't want countries to intervene? So like no more foreign aid?
There can be foreign aid in a hypothetical without intervention, but I have yet to see it done in principle.
Oh, maybe
what country is willing to do foreign aid without any intervention?
Chow, I'd like to like be a little friendly to you, like give you like, so I'm a little bit on your side in that Dominican Republic's unique in that of all the countries in Latin and South America that America fucked with during that time,
Buckeye, what do you mean?
Got the best
what did
deal.
who say
Absolutely.
about
like they are
owners?
doing better than they don't have a huge immigrant crisis. They're not doing the worst. Like they are like right now at this moment, they're doing the best out of all the people, out of all the countries that got involved in those deals with America. But we also like, which is great. We should acknowledge that, right? I'm on your side. Like you're like, it's like nobody. This isn't like America literally just going in, forcing itself on them, and like nobody. There's agency involved, and I do think that's important to recognize. I also think like, but when we talk about like, yes, Dominican Republic benefited. Also, and so addition to it, also America forced Trujillo into office, and we got 40 years of a dictator who would come around. Like as a story, I have my
you got the
grandpa
context
told me a
now,
story
though?
of like what it was like when Trujillo came to town. Trujillo would come to town, every person in this village would have to come out, and then he would go, you, and you. And those would be girls, and they would have to come with them and be his sex slaves for the rest of however long you wanted. They would just out of nowhere would just go boop, and that was somebody America deliberately made the leader of. So it's kind of like, I love it.
Yeah,
I get what you're saying. Agency is important. We can't just be like America did all the bad, because like in the end of the day, that Trujillo was Dominican also. So I feel like I'm trying to get where you're coming from. I think
I
it's
just don't
like,
see
it's hard to shake like the kind of frustration that Kat will also have, like where it kind of sucks when your country just gets fucked over by people, and like then
I don't know why we're
like,
dunking on something that
what the fuck am I
like
supposed to do now? Like what are we
doesn't
as a country
affect
supposed
them,
to do?
but
it's just so hard to fix.
Building off that,
I'd like to know more about
internally,
his intentions.
What do you see as the internal path to political stability? Katarina.
What is a path to political stability? I mean, I don't know. It's really complex when it comes to the country, and I'm not like very aware of like how their constitution works. But overall, there's too much government. There's too much government corruption. taxes are not being collected at all. Like there's no real infrastructure to actually go and like collect taxes from business owners. So when we have a bunch of infrastructural issues, there's very little money to even go ahead and like fix some of these issues. It would be nice if people stop assassinating or directly meddling in our elections and politics. Assassination might be nice to not do. The education's definitely a lot more necessary. As I said, it doesn't really make sense. It's really hard for me to be super gung ho pro democracy in a context in which people are not even able to know what they're voting for. Our elections are so undemocratic. It makes America's turnout look so good. Like the last election that we had was 28% of voters turned out. There's just a lot of different issues, and I mean, I could probably go on for like a year and a half talking about all the different problems Haiti has, but
Yeah, to throw two extremes, I'm just curious. If you had to choose between Haiti dealing with all these problems themselves over a long period of time, or like a 1940s occupation by a foreign power to establish a new government and set things up over like a 10-year period, which do you think would have like a which would you prefer?
that went very well for Afghanistan. The joke is it didn't. I mean, like that's cute and all. Like, yes,
Germany and Japan.
What do you mean? Like the occupation?
Well, Germany and Japan are also examples of America going in.
Okay, but that's like these are different types of occupation. There's not like wars. All right, never mind.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is it's just like that's not ever the intention. Like, sure, like okay, so after what? Very like pretty quickly into us, invading Afghanistan. There was no longer very much, casualties taking place. There wasn't very much like war going on. So at some point, it was just an occupation, right? And then they left with, we put deals and things are going to be great and super stable, and it fell faster than like I could do a split right now. That shit was quick. Like, great. Like, we can say that we're here for pro-democracy, setting up the state, holding your hand. But, like, at the end of the day, that's actually, like, not what's happening. At some point, it's just going to be, like, a covert way of saying, like, yes, we're here for nation building. But, like, it's going to be mostly, like, a resource extraction and other things. So, I mean, yeah, I honestly, I prefer we continue to, like, burn tires in the street for the next 50 years as opposed to like basically having this.
Maybe I can add on to Kat's saying because he's talking about tire to make it more clear where she's coming from. Like imagine, like I think you can think of like Elysium. I think you made a really good analogy. Like about like would you rather the 1940s occupation, and I think you can see the differences. And the Dominican Republic made that decision to do the occupation. Basically, Haiti didn't, or more so like Haiti didn't even get the chance to make. Nobody offered it really.
Yeah.
And so you can see the differences. And so when you're Haitian, right, it's kind of like it would take a lot of pride swallowing and a lot like it's a kind of humiliating thing to be asked or like want to even consider. Like, do you regret that your country wasn't just taken over by some bigger power? And like, do you think maybe it's time to get taken over by a bigger power so you can get your shit fixed? Like
the occupation wasn't even in the 40s.
You and Char are being very rational and like realistic about when you ask these questions. Like you're like being serious. You're not trying to having tensions. You're like, this seems like it seems like this is like kind of the only way countries like this gets fixed. But as a member of the country, you're going to be like, well, I don't like that fucking idea. That's like, it's a really humiliating idea. I don't really like that. Like, I don't want to have to like beg, like, please, Big Daddy America, come and take me. Like, come and buy me.
Yeah.
Nobody wants the big, like, abusive sugar daddy. And it's like, yeah, Dominican Republic benefited from it. But like, if you ask like a Dominican Republic back then, like, do you want to just get taken over? They'd probably like, they didn't even get to make the decision. The rich people did.
So you don't think it's like or like internal like political viable for even to get something along those lines because people really don't want that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm sure a Haitian politician is much more likely to be amicable to that than KataraNa is. But KataraNa is talking about, like, I care about Haiti. I am proud as a Haitian. I don't like, and I know, and we all know how America be doing, how it does to,
It do be.
foreign countries. Like, it tends to not, like, even in the best intentions, it feels weird. And it's just so hard to make sure that everything goes well. Like, there's going to be a cost. And I think that idea is scary. And like I said before, it's a bit of a humiliating idea.
Well,
Okay,
it goes against.
Fluff. Actually, no,
Yeah.
not Fluff. But like, you know what? I kind of want to do something. Maybe someone come out of it. Okay, to my European friends on this panel, was there some
Whoa.
sense of humiliation because of the Marshall Plan?
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
this is
Yeah,
no, just kidding.
to a degree.
Just kidding. No, not at all.
not to my knowledge, but I feel like the Marshall Plan. Like, I understand the analogy you're going for, but I feel like the Marshall Plan, the framing of it, the whole context makes it very different in that.
They wanted it too, I think.
Like the U.S., even though they intervene only towards the end of the war, they also contribute a bit to the destruction. So it's not really justified that way, but it's also like partially a reparation for the bombings and stuff. But most importantly, I think the most important part of the Marshall Plan was really the fact that it was basically a very officially very little strings attached offer of reconstruction and help. Unofficially, obviously, it was the U.S. setting up the influence for the future Cold War and the Western Bloc. There's no doubt about that was what was really going on. But on paper, it was not even a loan. It started off as a loan, but then they were like, you know what? If we put them into a debt trap, we're gonna just get World War III. We're gonna get those countries fucked up again, and so we need to actually rebuild them. And that's admirable. I don't understand why that lesson wasn't learned for later instances of reconstruction. That we gotta rebuild with as little strings attached as possible, because then we're putting countries into whether it's debt traps or other kind of traps. But I don't know. I don't think people look at American aid coming towards them nowadays and expect a reiteration of the Marshall Plan. That's since then I can't think of a single instance of reconstruction that was done that the same way.
Also,
Wait, that's hard because
if I can, like, because Zhao like mentioned me as well, like, I think, like, one of the things that we talk about, like, when we talk about the Marshall Plan, it's not like the Netherlands has been bullied by the US for decades or centuries, or
I got some
by
numbers for these
Spain for
boys.
centuries, and Spain is handing out the Marshall Plan to us. So I think there's like definitely like a different connection.
Yeah.
Than saying like the Marshall Plan. Elysium.
no, it's fine. You basically something.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
wanted to
name
say.
it like
Hold on, I just want to say that, like, yeah. So we had the whole like time of occupation in Haiti, and I guess like that in itself like could have been seen as like a nation building effort. But post the Marines leaving Haiti, there were 11 different successors for a Haitian president, and keep in mind a Haitian presidential term is supposed to be 5 years, so that should have taken 55 years to happen, and it happened in 20 years. So Haiti being occupied by the US didn't necessarily lead to a whole bunch of stability in the country. It led to what was a bunch of over and over coup d'etats. We have some people that were only in power for 187 days. Somebody was in power for 53 days. Ooh, another one was in power for 20 days. It didn't really help with stability. And then finally, what we got in terms of stability was our lovely, lovely dictator, Duvalier. So, I don't know.
Ciao.
Okay, I wanted to respond to the Marshall Plan point. Naaman, I think the element that you're missing is that a lot of the countries that were affected by the Marshall Plan,
Hello.
like mainly in Europe, they had a like a history or
Yeah,
like
that's what we were
already a
talking about earlier.
foundation
We were talking
for,
about like how
say,
similar the
liberal
countries were in
democracy.
terms of history, and
And
then
I
suddenly they
think
fucking
the problem
diverged.
with the Marshall Plan afterwards, or trying to replicate it afterwards, is the expectation that the same outcomes would be achieved. I think what is something that you're not considering is the element of civil society that was present in Europe in comparison to what little of it would say, like, say, in Afghanistan, which doesn't have that kind of history, which doesn't have that kind of culture.
I think I agree. It's a fair point to say that the European countries, because of the because of their history, were more the two world wars weren't enough to put them in an unstable situation where the Marshall Plan would have gone to naught as it could be in a very unstable country. That's absolutely a fair point. I still think that the whole
I
question
know
of
a
how
whole lot
strings were
about the
attached or not
Duvaliers.
to the plan is also really important. But I 100% agree with what you said.
Yeah, so then my whole point with that kind of a play is that I could understand that humility. It could be humiliating to want to like bow down or be submissive to like a larger power when you're a smaller power. But then like this conversation is really making me think like a realist, that those kinds of values does not is not a priority over saying like economic military security, things like that. I think those are much more important to a country than, say, your pride as like a people or of a nation. And like, does the Dominican Republican, are they less Dominican Republican than like if they didn't submit?
Yeah, so that's not even like really, I don't even care that much about like, oh, gung ho, it is us Haitians that must fix the country single-handedly and nobody else can help. It's more of the perspective of based off of the way that the US, because that's most likely going to always be the the point of power that would intervene in something like this. The way that the U.S. has treated Haiti over the years does not make me particularly trustful of, oh yeah, maybe we should do our reconstruction efforts with them. And of course, I don't expect it to be a completely altruistic and we just care about like you island because you guys are so cute and small. But it's just let's say the way that the U.S. operates. So, the Dominican Republic dictator was assassinated using CIA weapons. But what was the Dominican Republic dictator doing? It was the Dominican Republic dictator was working on improvements to the economics of the country. Yet they were assassinated. Were they great? No, but they were assassinated using, I guess, with the help of the U.S. But when we
Wait, were they assassinated because they were improving the economy, or was it because of some other reason?
why are countries in the Latin America, why are their dictators or leaders usually assassinated?
Oh, because that was typically during the Cold War.
Yeah, well, yeah, this was during that period, but like a lot of times, like there's coups d'etats that are facilitated by the U.S. or assassinations that are facilitated by the U.S. whenever there happens to be somebody in power that truly wants to like improve the country. So we had the
Wait, no, not at all. The assassination you're referring to, as far as I understand it, is an element of the Cold War. It was like because his treatment and tendencies towards communism, his tendencies towards communism was a concern, and his treatment of the people had gotten to like a tipping point that there was back and forth whether the CIA should support an assassination.
Okay, so
like it wasn't because he was improving the country.
give me a second. So put a pin in that, because at the same time we had like the U.S. like facilitating the coup d'état that was taking place in Bolivia when it's post Cold War and we're still trying to get rid of like socialist leaders. But if it was such a crazy concern of America that he's hurting his own people, then why did they let Duvalier stay until he fucking just kicked the bucket, right? Like I don't think it's all a bunch of altruism. Oh no, the treatment of the people has gone too far off the deep end, because as
No,
I
it's
am
not altruism.
Yeah. So it's not mostly because they're killing people. Because if it was mostly they're killing people, the U.S. would get a lot more involved in different types of conflicts around the world. Why do you think, like, we have Bill Clinton that put his hands behind his fat fucking back during Rwanda when it was happening for 100 days and was like, I don't know, I don't see anything.
It depends. It depends on the geopolitics of when people are getting killed.
Yeah,
So
well,
there is a politically expedient reason of why to support a dictator, and you know, a reason that you're not going to be involved in atrocities, then yeah, it's not going to be consistent. But like in general, those are like
well,
there's
it's
a
just
value competition.
it's just very generally inconsistent because when it's like a country basically killing
Yeah.
its own people, the US was like more than happy to be like, I don't know, Papa Doc, keep doing your thing. As long as the beaches are open to us, we're more than happy to go there. And that's what happened in that case. No one actually did anything to get rid of Papa Doc, even though he was like killing off so many different types of political opposition, the same way that Trujillo did. But at the same time, like, they didn't give a fuck about this. But suddenly, America cares when it's, we have a coup d'etat and Aristide gets outed, and now we're going to force you to put your person back in government. Oh, but the America suddenly cares when Martelli is going to lose an election. I just don't think it makes any sense for Haiti to want to work with America specifically. So I guess, like, let's say France, or I don't know, not France, let's say England suddenly becomes a huge interventionist state and says, hey, we would like to help you out with your country in exchange for like this, then yeah, maybe Haitians would think about it. But the US, like, forget it. It's just, it makes sense why they might be quite a lot more distrustful of Americans in the country and actually dictating anything to them. And if they don't want to take it, that's completely fine. I would actually personally prefer that Haitians continue to burn tires in the street rather than they go ahead and work out something with the US, because I think the US is going to fuck over Haiti any way they can.
So I know
Okay,
for a
wait.
fact.
Hold
Yeah,
on. Okay, so then, like, I could understand that there is a really bad history when it comes to the relationship between Haiti and the United States.
But it's not
is
just
that
history, right? It's not like we're talking about 1804, right? Like, we're talking about, like, we're talking 2010, we're talking 91. It's not crazy like years ago
US
and
provided
stuff.
aid to Haiti, did they not?
I'm happy they put all 6 houses that they built after the earthquake. I see that.
Are you really reducing that down to 6 houses?
Yes,
I mean, like,
using
the actual number the Red
no,
Cross
actually,
did, to be
yes,
fair.
the Red Cross built 6 houses using.
The Red Cross is not the United States. The Red
Okay,
Cross is an international organization.
I'm going. You know what?
Okay.
You should go to Haiti and let me know how beautiful it looks
Let
right now,
Fluff
because
build
it's
the
not.
Let Fluff
Yeah.
build the bridge.
Okay,
Fluff build the bridge.
go ahead, build the bridge.
Let's
or
okay,
a
let's
house.
build a bridge.
Or 6
All right,
houses.
Chow, I absolutely understand what your brain is at right now. Like, it seems really, it just seems like it seems like it's prideful and like unrealistic and just not mathematically or a lot. Like, it just doesn't make any fucking realistic sense. Like that. Like, if you want your country to get better, just do what you have to do. Like, everyone, like, there's no other way about it. And like, that's a reason. I think that's a really reasonable position to have. Like, I get it. It's really reasonable. What I feel like what I'm worried about a little bit is that the scale of like where it seems really, really logical, like there's actually valid points on this that go beyond emotions. And it's that, like, what Elysium and Kat were talking, one where Elysium and Kat were talking about is what America actually tends to do, it's assassinations, and like, not to go as far as assassination, but what it tends to intervene is America has corporate investment. Big American corporations have investment in an area, in a country, and once that country starts to nationalize in some way, or starts to say, all right, American corporation, you're making a little bit too much money with us not getting any of the gain. Like, you're kind of just benefiting from us without us gaining a whole lot. Then America's like, oh, well, that's too far. Like, and that's when the intervention starts. So there's one aspect. There's a second aspect of, like, where America undeniably has a history of just been like, all right, whoever is the nicest to us, you get to lead that country. And like, as conspiracy as it sounds, it's just it's literally like, we just have so much evidence that that's just what they do. That it's just a fact. And like, it feels silly to say out loud that they do it, but it's just what they do. And the third thing is, is that you never know when those strings that are going to be attached, when do they come off, like, and how deep are they going to go? And I think those are valid concerns to be had that make it a bit more than just this illogical or this deal that should be struck up immediately. And I think, like, I like America. I live here. I'm American. And I'd love to see like an actual beneficial deal, but I think it's okay to be apprehensive or be at the point, because I think America's done it enough times to be like, I don't really trust America. I don't feel like they would give us a deal that would in the end be beneficial. I don't feel that's that illogical of position. I think that we have a lot of examples of where it doesn't pan out well, and more so if once you make the deal, there's really no backing out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, but then still, at least for me, I don't feel convinced that like one priority is above the other when it comes to Katarina. It feels like, you know, that meme where there's like the surf and he's carrying the wood stuff, and he says we should improve society somewhat, and then somebody pops out from the well and is like, oh, but you participate in society. That's what it feels like right now, and I just
What?
it.
I feel like Cat just
I don't
thinks
get it.
he trust America
I
to
don't
make a
get
good
it.
deal.
What?
Okay.
Dog.
Like, what if
Yeah, sure, but then when it comes to like saying, say America wants the Haitian economy to liberalize more, they want American corporations to want to set up businesses without fear of the government nationalizing it.
What?
Is that too much? Or
What?
is that
A
too
little
much?
bit. I think
A little
like
bit.
setting up a country.
Why would
I think
it be too much?
I think setting up because it's literally like attaching a leech to a country. Like when you say like a corporation can come in and make a whole bunch of money for America, but not the country that it's dragging resources
John, I got
from.
you.
Wait, it
That's
makes
like
money
that's
for
like
You're
the
not
country.
nationalizing
Who do you think is
anything.
going to get employed from like this? This is the nature of foreign direct
It's like the
investment.
Amazon argument, though. It's kind of like the fulfillment center argument of like where it doesn't matter how they treat the people there, or like it's kind of more closely. It'd be like the phone center argument, like where people like phone centers in the
None.
Philippines,
I don't
like,
know what
they're
the fuck
American
he's talking
companies,
about. This
and
is not even like
the
an
way
issue.
workers are treated there are like terrible. Like at what cost does industrialization need to happen?
Well, it's not like there are labor practices set, at least like in this day and age, that protects
Oh.
the labor of like
Not
in
in
developing
Haiti.
countries,
Not in
especially.
Haiti. There isn't. Our minimum wage is $5 a week.
What
And
are your
shouldn't
labor
that be something that
practices
should be like a
without
strings
investment?
attached reform when it comes to like foreign aid?
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused in
It's
general.
the minimum
Like,
wage because of the United States or because of the Haitian government?
I didn't say it had anything to do with the U.S.
Okay, well, I'm kind of like
Like-
talking about it from like if there were a deal between the United States and Haiti, what would it be?
So this is
Like,
like
what is the line?
This is like the argument of like we're gonna build. I have money and I'm going to build a resort in your country. I'm going to make a lot of money because tourists are going to come, but I'm going to pay the people exactly the same wages that you guys have as your bare minimum. But taxes wise, I'm going to make I'm only going to be taxed by my country and not yours. But why are you mad?
That's
I
not how
created
that
jobs.
works. That's not how that works. They do get taxed in the countries.
Yes.
At least,
so-
like, unless there's some exception in Haiti that I don't know of, according to my knowledge, when it comes to foreign direct investment, one of the benefits, one of the pros that foreign countries do want foreign direct investment from other countries is that they're able to tax the businesses from other countries.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused as to like what's your particular like stake in this? Not as in like you're white, why are you talking, but more like what are you trying to get at? Like what do you want me to agree on? Because like I see like it seems like you're devil's advocating from here until the end of like the day, but like why?
I'm not devil's advocating. I'm pretty. This
So,
is like
like,
my
so what-
stance.
Yeah, so what exactly like are you? Is it like a pro-imperialism thing? Is it like a pro like American
Is foreign direct
having
investment
hands?
imperialist?
I think the issue, Chow, is that
Some people.
I'm like we're taking the time to like listen to like what your argument is, but I don't feel like you're like I feel like there's a real diminishing of
Uh-huh.
it doesn't seem like you think any reason that we give, like me or Kat has given you, makes any sense. Like, and I feel like there's a lack of respect to it. And like, I'm trying to take the
Uh-huh.
time really to go like,
Yeah.
I understand your point and it's logical, but we have to like, if you want to understand like why Kat feels this way, I think it's important to treat it like take
I
it
do
as like
understand.
she acknowledges your point of view as well. Like I
I
think
do understand, and like it's probably maybe like a couple of years ago I would be more on Cat's
Mhm.
side than now, but and maybe now I'm just like a bit more of a utilitarian, and that I maybe like am more considerate of the power politics of that age, and like having to deal with what we have to deal with right now. Like we can't change anything of the past, and like while we can say currently in our moral hierarchy, one action before was like considered good, but now it's bad. Example, slavery. That it's not something that we can just like disregard. And if I were a politician, okay, and like this is my perspective, and perhaps if you're thinking as a citizen, this is a lot different. But I'm thinking from a position
Thanks,
as a
KP.
decision maker. I'm also thinking of a position as like in a way a political scientist.
I know I
And
haven't done
kind
this
of
stuff in a
thinking about
while. How do you guys
what
feel about
are the
this? Like, are
options
you enjoying
that are one
this? What do
available
you
to
think?
us, but can also achieve like the greatest good. I'm not here trying to like cause harm. I am really thinking about like what can we do to improve society. And while I do understand that there is some skepticism of like the United States doing anything across the world, because say invasion of Iraq that greatly harmed the US reputation.
Wait, no, wait.
Totally
Iraq is a
understandable.
success story.
Huh? What?
Iraq is a massive success story. We're talking about nation
No, it
building.
isn't. Oh my god.
I just-
Okay,
We're not gonna get
Alright.
into the Middle East.
Yeah,
so,
that's fine.
Hey, okay, all right. But like, while I could understand that there can be some skepticism,
Oh, thank you.
I don't think it's reasonable to compare like the United States actions of right now to what it was before. And while one person may say that it was just a couple of decades ago, we're in completely different times with completely different foreign policy ideologies. Before it was uh what, neoconservatism. That was Reagan, Bush, Nixon, and like even Democrats around that area as well. But now we're more of a like an economic liberal world, and I think countries can like greatly benefit from that. And I don't think it's reasonable for a person to just like completely rule it out 100%. No, we can't do this. Like I know one person on this podcast said before that history oftentimes like it doesn't repeat, but it echoes. But like, are we not going to consider the changes that have occurred?
I think that's a very reasonable question to ask.
Well, I guess I would take a lot more like let's talk about the changes that have occurred if more recent history was more filled with like rainbow and sunshine based relations between the two countries, but unfortunately that's not what it is. And like even things that are supposed to be disguised as really cute, we're trying to help you situations, have still been devastating to Haiti. For example, the rice issue that we have in our country, because the U.S. was like, oh my gosh, you guys are, poor, you need help, right? Here, let's give you rice. And due to that, we were already growing our own rice. We had enough rice already in the country to completely feed everybody. We had our own rice production. But due to that, now that rice was just being dumped and there was a surplus of rice, rice farming in Haiti is now a dead industry. Nobody grows rice anymore. That was I'm sure it was at least to the point that we had something that we could export. So that would have been an additional thing that we could have added to our GDP. People within the country could have sold rice to others within the country to further further uphold their own livelihood. But because the U.S. was like, we're going to help you, ooh, here goes a little bit of help, you've actually now destroyed the livelihoods of like thousands of people. So I mean, like
Yep.
that was really cute. Thanks for trying to help, but you fucked us again. And I don't
I have a question
understand
for you, Kat.
what to do, homie.
Um, what do you think? What do you think if you were to get whatever you wanted from America, right? Like, let's say I'm gonna make you Presidente of Haiti for a few weeks, right? And I'll be Presidente of America. I'm taking over Biden for a little bit.
Nice.
What would you want from old Fluff to make to benefit Haiti as much as possible?
I mean, because I'm always in the STEM Lord mode, my first thing would be a little bit more like energy independence. We only have electricity in the capital about 12 hours a day. In other parts of the country, it's even worse. So I would like a significant amount of investment within Haiti's educational institutions, like our universities, so that people actually are able to learn more about renewable energy sources, considering that Haiti has a lot of different types of energy that could be dispersed in other ways. So, for example, yeah, like, you know.
So let's say Vice President Chow is now talking to me. He's like, "Listen, Fluff, you got to start. You can't just be doing this shit and not make money. Like, you're being a little silly here. People are gonna you're not gonna get elected next time if you don't we have to make a deal here." And so I'm like, "Okay, Presidente Cat, we're gonna hook you up with whatever energy resource that Haiti deems that they feel they would benefit most from. But you're gonna have to let American companies be the ones that build it, and you guys pay that off in some way. And eventually, we're not gonna keep it forever, but you gotta let us get up in there and make some money, and then eventually all those resources, the windmills or whatever we build, eventually it goes to back. Haiti, the country, gets to own it once they buy it from us. Well, so we'll invest, and then you buy it from us as time goes on."
Name, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just want to intervene here because if those are the kinds of infrastructure deals Western countries are doing, I would be so fucking stoked for so much more stoked than I usually am because I think we all know that what usually happens is that the deals are very similar to what you described, except that the ownership of the infrastructure is ad perpetuity. You never have this idea of a cession of infrastructure.
I didn't even like that
the country's
fucking deal.
sovereignty and independence, etc. You have this idea that you got to milk the shit out of anything you get, which is you could argue that that's the normal behavior for a for-profit company. But you would like to hope that in politics, where you can do things beyond pure capitalism, you can make choices that are diplomatic or geopolitical or maybe even humanitarian. That we could make those slightly different choices.
China's doing that's literally what China's doing, right? It's literally we'll give you all this we'll give you this, but we'll invest, but you're never getting it back. You're right that no country's ever going to do that. But I'm just trying to see if here's this sweet deal. Is that at least is that an example of something that's cool? Is that
sure
where it is? I realize that's an idealistic thing, which is I'm glad that you pointed that out, so nobody thinks that America ever does that. But just as an example, is that good enough, Kat?
No, I don't like that either. I'm sorry. I mean, it's just because maybe in a country in which I know that it would be actually plausible for them to buy it out one day, but I know in a case of Haiti, that would basically be mission impossible, and thus it would be a perpetuity contract disguised as a non-perpetuity contract. Also, it's just really strange to allow the U.S. to very much benefit off of, once again, the labor, right? Because who is it going to end up building it? It's going to end up being the U.S. It's going to end up being Haitians that are building it, but the U.S. is profiting from it. It's going to be the same exploitation of labor situation that we have, where people are getting paid 250 gourds per week to go ahead and build something that's going to make U.S. people multi-millions. It's $1.99 slavery. Just put with enough rice for you to feed your family instead.
So
Katarana, would you
Ciao.
say that was like the same relationship when the United States and China was starting to, when the United States was starting to say like export its labor to China? It's
I would
basically
say no.
slavery.
I would say no because we've seen how that's gone now. I mean,
Oh no, you
Uh,
have
Wait,
to
no, no,
bite
no.
that
When it
bullet.
first started, that is, I clarified that. I qualified that. Like when it first started, are you aware of the labor practices in those specialized zones in
yeah,
China?
I'll just say I don't know enough about it to really give an opinion then.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Not only like the wages, but also there were no standards at all because they were in specialized zones, and so a lot of the corporations and a lot of the workers there were abused. And I don't want to say that because I don't know. I can't compare. I don't want to say it's the same as like the situation with Haiti or what the United States would do to Haiti. But what tends to happen, at least like in the global economy post Cold War, is that uh, the developed countries, or actually, I'm going to mention what, like is it Wallerstein? World Systems Theory, the core states, the core countries, the developed countries, the Western world, would export labor to the periphery countries, and then the periphery countries would, like in a way, they would benefit from that labor because their families are getting, or the people there, they're getting more income because they're getting employed. Um, and then like they're able to buy stuff, standards of living increases, per capita income increases. That tends to happen uh, when that does happen, and then that's like the development. And I'll say that the distribution of the gains is uneven greatly, but it's still like a great improvement than to just not do anything at all, which is like what a lot of countries have done. Say like, uh, well, those countries tend to just not like the United States.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think
Right,
maybe
true.
we're looking about it as a case of like, okay, so at the end of the day, like China was able to benefit from this, but there's also other countries beyond China, though that's the one we always care about, that also got labor exported to, yet didn't become a bustling metropolis like the way that China did. And perhaps that might just be due to a difference in legislation. But if China was able to have the legislation, or and other countries didn't, then I sure as hell know that Haiti won't. So this is just going to be, once again, like a hypothetical that could happen, but not necessarily is guaranteed to happen.
I
Yeah,
feel like
but
you've set up
I want to
your
give Elysium. Yeah. go
yeah,
on.
you've set up your Haiti to have like no exit. Like this feels like super doomer. Um, which I don't know. I understand. It just feels a little pessimistic or like overly pessimistic.
I
Kat, do you want to respond?
I guess I think a lot of other countries have relationships with the US that are like negative, but I just don't think anybody entirely understands the extent to which like Haiti is being consistently just fucking deep-throated by the US. And I just don't think
Well,
it's necessarily something that we should like go running into open arms about, because even right now, as I'm saying, I would like
sure.
us not to be intervened by the US, even without like, and even I say I wouldn't like it to be happening in exchange for foreign aid. Right now, the way that it's working is even not in exchange for foreign aid. That's what's happening. So I would hate to see how beautiful those contracts would be written up in exchange for actually getting something out of it. So like it's not, yeah, my Haiti is doomer, but that's because we're already currently living in a situation in which Haiti has been receiving the doomer pill.
Yeah, to a degree for sure. You referenced in the very beginning the like sanctions and stuff on Haiti.
Mhm.
How like had a bunch of negative impacts, but like those were an attempt to like bolster the things that you were talking about, right? Like that was an attempt to be like, hey, you guys need to be more democratic. You need to focus more on education. You need to be building up your infrastructure and to like fight back against governments that weren't doing that. But like I don't know, I feel like there's always a way to take any effort, and if it's not perfectly successful, take the doomer side of it, especially if you're gonna the like foreign investment's really hard because I'm really in favor of that. I see all these things being facilitated by it. But if you're gonna just view that as like
I don't.
labor
Oh,
theft,
okay. Hold on. I don't have a problem with foreign investment. Like, let's say if another country wants to come and start a business, like like franchises. If franchises want to go ahead and build up in Haiti, I don't have a problem with it. I have more of a problem of governments directly like saying that we can help you, but in exchange for X, Y, and Z. But like one of the like nicer resorts in Haiti is like run, I think by it's some Spanish speaking country is the one that runs it. And I'm not like, how dare it not only be Haitian companies that have resorts here? If anyone's going to not pay their workers, it's gonna be other Black people. Like that's not the thing I want. It's just more. Shut up, Dylan. It's gonna. Yeah. I don't have a problem with like countries or people with money coming in and investing. It's more of, would you like us to fix all of your problems? We can do it if you let us cut all your trees or things like that. Hello, what's up? Okay, Dylan, just ignore him. Yep, this is Haitian. Thank you.
Yeah. So, KataraNa, I see the dynamic, the power dynamic witnessing right now. That's a poor joke. Nobody laughed. Fucking my life. Okay, if there isn't going to be any contracts or like any agreement, then how are you say like going to deal with work visas?
Sorry.
I think that's the type of contract she meant.
Sorry, are you asking
okay,
how
so
are
work visa, so,
how are
like,
work visas gonna work in Haiti?
Between Haiti and say like any other country that wants to do foreign direct investments.
I'm sorry, you really think we have some type of infrastructure that we don't? Just walk over and they're not going to kick you out. What deportation?
Right, so you're saying visas are too far.
Yeah, well, like
are visas too far?
Boy, you're on a different planet right now. Okay, like this.
No, I'm not. I'm not because okay. So for example, really recently I learned this is that Taiwan had to make like specific deals with other countries in its region. And one of those deals or a part of that deal was to establish like what are the rules and regulations regarding work visas? How long are they going to be? What are their like the limitations of like being able to go from one country to another? And like that's a part of the trade agreement. Would that not be like a strings attached?
Nah, homie.
How about guaranteeing the corporation that wants to like go into your country to do foreign direct investment? Guaranteeing that they're not going to get nationalized without just compensation.
I want to give it to Fluff.
Nationalization is not a problem, but yeah.
Fluff,
what? Wait. Nationalization is not a problem. Then how do you expect any business to want to go to your country to do a foreign direct investment if they're at risk of nationalization?
Occurring in Haiti.
So let's give it to Fluff.
I don't want anyone to get mad. All right, so
what the fuck is he talking about?
I'll first say
we don't have any.
I think it's more like when you talk. I think Charlie, I'm glad that you got to the where you feel like you're understanding about the power dynamic thing. I think what Kat was referring to, and I want to make my own point instead of the bridging for a second after this. I think he's talking about is that Haiti's in such a position right now that like there's almost no way for it to not there to be like a fair deal. Like Haiti needs time to get to like a spot where it can, have its own infrastructure. Then like maybe consider deals but right now like there's almost no way it wouldn't be extremely disadvantageous, and she can tell me if she agrees with that in a minute, because I have like a thing I'd like bring up is that I totally respect not wanting to do that, like these deals, Kat. Like I've been trying to steelman your arguments the whole time and steelman Chow's. My question is
devil's advocate.
Realistically, I feel like, and I think the other gentlemen here are also saying like there's probably no realistic way that this isn't going to happen. Like, and I think you're seeing like in Haiti, like, well, if Haiti doesn't want to make the deal's going to be made for it. Like, it's not, there's no, and like I think it's shitty and it's awful to do that, like to force a country like that way. But I think it's literally going to like either Haiti can try to make I feel like either Haiti can try to make the best deal it can, or all the countries are just gonna sneak their tentacles in, and they're gonna do what they want with the country, and like it's gonna there's no avoiding getting gobbled up by like another country in some form, like either economically, or diplomatically or some way. And so, like, I totally respect not wanting your country to be exploited, right? I think that's a reasonable thing. But it's like, what do you think's gonna happen? Like, realistically speaking, like, do you feel like it's avoidable? Because I don't. It seems like that's a bit not possible. And like, what are you gonna do about that?
So Chow wanted to respond. Chow.
No, I think that was
Nationalizations.
directly at Kat.
Okay.
I don't have any response yet.
Okay, Kat.
Okay, yeah, really quick. I just wanted to answer like that last thing. So nationalization is not a problem in Haiti. Like none of our companies are state owned except for like our bank and one of our television programs. Like most things are private. I don't know why we were talking about nationalization as if that's like an active threat. But Fluff, can you reiterate your question?
So it's like you either have, basically to sum it up, is like we can talk about like what deal is going to be good, or like what, like not trying to avoid an exploitative deal, but like as long as basically if Haiti keeps trying to avoid making that kind of deal, it's going to be made for it. Like you talked about, like how it's already happening, where U.S. is like, all right, well, if you're not going to play, we'll just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think Haiti should just go ahead and try to make a deal, or like what do you think they should do? Because it's like it seems like realistically speaking, it can either play ball or get played with.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would need to know a lot more about what some of the deals actually look like, because I just don't have enough reference to see like what does it look like.
Fair.
So I just know that based off of what the non-consensual playing looks like, I already hate it. Thus, I'm very distrustful. But I don't know if I were to see some type of deal where it's like in exchange for like U.S. citizens having a discount on all of your resorts, we will make it more safe. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I don't really give a fuck. Sounds good, right? But like, those aren't the kind of deals I imagine that there are. But I guess if I were able to, I don't know, I'd have to see what the deal looks like, because I don't want to just say holistically yes, no matter what the context is, always yes.
Do you, Katarina, do you have like the same feel if like the European Union would like step in to do some sort of a deal, or is it the same for all the different like big powers or big players?
I think it's always fair to say that you need to give a look at what it is prior to agreeing. I mean, I just specifically like have a lot of reasons to have disdain towards the U.S. when it comes to their involvement in Haiti. But you know, if America were to go forward with a deal, and then the EU were to make a deal, and everybody was somehow fighting over how are we going to help your country, but the US's deal was just slightly better, I'd say, okay, yeah, we should still go with the US. If the EU was slightly better, then we should go with the EU. If all of them suck, then I guess they all suck. Like, I don't
China.
Yeah, let's see how it goes with China. I mean, I don't have a particular like America hate boner. I think I can be persuaded to hate all deals equally.
Okay. So Dave, you have been quite quiet. So is there anything that you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I've been mostly listening. I mean, I don't know. Like on the one hand, we've discussed on previous times like the dynamics of making deals between a lesser power and a greater power. How the ethics of what goes on in there. Like in general, I hate being the guy who like intervenes just to say that. But like on the one hand, I do see the pragmatic reality that countries will generally be much better off when with foreign aid and foreign investment coming from richer countries. That and long term that will pay off. Well, dividends. It's an investment, but also for the people. But on the other hand, there's something that really bothers me with like going back to earlier when we were discussing like do the ends justify the means. One thing that really bothers me usually is that we tend to look at those deals without considering the historically, by looking, hey, look, this deal, maybe it was a bit one-sided, maybe it was really like a little bit predatory, but hey, the person who got like the short end of the deal, they still got a lot out of it. I like looking at things and thinking, how can we do better? Could that deal have been more equal while still benefiting greatly the dominant negotiator? If yes, then no, that deal wasn't as good as it could have been. A good deal, there's a saying in business, right? A good deal, a good contract is one where both people leave unhappy. It's one where you don't have one person fucking over the other one. And so that's the reality of deals between especially between countries that are in deep distress and superpowers, is that the superpowers will get whatever they want from the country. Hopefully what they want is not stuff that is damaging to the country, and that is the best case scenario in those situations, from just like looking at like being like purely pragmatic. And that can happen. That happened for him. I honestly don't know. That's all I can say on the discussion ahead.
So Naaman, I want to respond to that, because like I could understand how like we could be really, really utilitarian, really be thinking about all these different choices that we could have made in order to achieve a better world. But then I think something that is like often not considered is that like there's interest involved. And so while we can morally grandstand on what could have been better if we just like took out this one thing at this one particular time, et cetera, the reality is that there are more factors in play when it comes to international relations than just what is good. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
of course.
it sounds like a bit ultra utilitarian to like for if I were to try to like apply it personally, like if my goal was the betterment of the world, I wouldn't be sitting here streaming. I would be probably in some other country working with an NGO, volunteering and doing something there. But then here comes another problem in that, oh, well, I could also be doing the same thing in another country and maybe achieving more goodness. So then even taking that action, like you see how then that becomes like a bit of a dilemma, in that the
No, I
best
don't
thing
follow this
we
at
never
all.
know what the best thing is.
It's not about best thing. We can morally or just evaluate if something's predatory or not without being morally grandstanding. I don't understand.
Yeah, but I get Xiao's point. Just to respond to that, I would say I would say that what I would like to see is more of a consciousness of the interconnectedness of the world, especially with how globalization has gone. You no longer have the situation where you can exploit a country, even if it's on the other side of the world, and never have to deal with the consequence of it. Actually, that never happened, right? The globalization started with hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and the consequences of colonialism are still here today. Basically, I'm a bit tired of but I understand the reality of it, that like people will look for short-term profits, not because they care about short-term profits. They want profits that will actually reach it within their lifetimes for the most part. But I would like us to move in, when it comes to those kinds of dealings, more towards long-term thinking, understanding that things that will be beneficial to us short term, but that will destabilize a country, will most likely be not beneficial for anyone long term, neither the country that you're destabilizing or your own country. But I understand why that sounds like idealism, and it kind of is, because that's not how geopolitics is usually thought of, for sure.
Okay, so Kat, you were raising your hand, so
Yeah, there was something that was said earlier that I just wanted to push back on because I hadn't, and it was about sanctions, and how like the sanctions and are put in place to kind of propagate the things that I stand for, and I don't know. I don't know why I have to remind you about this, but sanctions never actually hurt the people that are causing issues for a country. It always hurts like the people that cannot survive. So most of the time, the poor. So in the case of like 1991, where there was a coup d'état executed by oligarchs and the Haitian military, the sanctions don't hurt oligarchs and the Haitian military. The sanctions end up hurting the average person. And it wasn't like a light little, no more gas type of sanction. This was a everything, nothing, everything type of sanction that causes like economic like disarray for not the average, like not oligarchs, but the average person. Like so many people died during that time due to hunger, and like that doesn't actually get anything that I want to get done. Democracy doesn't propagate like the more dead children there are as a result of a sanction that another country put on. So yeah, I just wanted to push back against that. But I also want to say that like I'm not being like a absolute idealist when it comes to like how you set up foreign aid, and I don't say that like I expect anything to come out of which Haiti is the main beneficiary or the sole beneficiary, but I prefer there to be deals that are struck that are either symbiotic or just situations in which it doesn't hurt the Haitian people. But I mean, just saying that, hey, we're going to go ahead and put something in that creates more jobs. The just creating more jobs, it does not help the average Haitian person, in which case if like just making a job were to be the thing that helps Haitian people, then I would go ahead and endorse like a new American business coming in every single day. The issue is more about who's going to be actually benefiting from all of the surplus value, especially when it comes to like the way that things are marked up. For the prices of the cost of labor in Haiti is so devastatingly low that when we go ahead and turn these products into something on the global stage, we're making like 1,000% more than 1,000% markup on what the Haitian labor is. And like, sure, now that person can feed their family, but there's something more that needs to be done. At least like there needs to be more money that is being maybe paying more than minimum wage if we were able to set up something like that. But that's never going to be the system that is set up. It's always going to be the most exploitive way in which we can give foreign aid humanly imaginable. So I guess, yeah, that's more of my qualms with it, is that like, even if it seems like it's helping, creating a $5 a day job is not helping Haiti as a whole. You're only like gonna allow 50 extra people to feed their families because that's how many jobs you're providing versus how much money you're making off of them. So it just doesn't seem equal.
Why is that ratio like how what should that ratio be? What should you bind labor to sales of a product be?
I think that we should do the same type of thing that we would do for the US. Like it's not
What's the whoa?
or something
Good deal.
similar. Is it unfair for me to say that I would like people in Haiti? I didn't say people in Haiti should make as much as people in the U.S. because it's a very different economy. I'm
But
not
they
saying
should
it
make
needs
more,
to have.
yeah.
It shouldn't be like the same exact minimum wage because there's not enough money within our like economy for that. But I would say that like I don't think $5 a day or less is something that's fair for Americans to come into another country and be paying. Especially when like
Or
they're coming out millionaires and we're coming out as just being able to buy rice.
okay.
KataraNa, I have a
That's a
question.
different conversation. It's fine.
I have a question regarding like this ratio, or like your statement on treatment the same or similar way as in the United States. Are you talking about like saying in Haiti we should have the same minimum wage as say in the United States?
I just said no.
You said no. Okay, all right. Then what do you mean? Like, do you want like an increase in the minimum wage?
Yes, I think there there definitely needs to be an increase in the minimum wage because a lot of times people say, okay, Haiti makes $5 a day, but it's okay because things must be really, really cheap there. And it's not. Things are not really, really cheap there.
Huh.
Like for me to buy a face wash when I was living in Haiti was $20 US. So that's what? 2 weeks of labor to wash my face using Haitian currency, like it doesn't make sense. So I think, especially because of how much stuff that we have imported and how much tariffs are put on everything, like living in Haiti is very expensive. That's why
So then like I would imagine that like to build a bridge with you, that if I were to say like support some sort of an agreement between the United States and Haiti, that one of those strings attached would be an effort to increase the minimum wage.
One of the strings attached should be an effort, not an effort. It should be like mandatory that we are not going to pay people essentially. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see what's functionally the difference between slavery and $2 a day. I really don't. So
no, you said $5 a day. Now it's $2 a day.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
$20 a day.
I,
Does it
I,
really?
I guess so. I guess so. But then okay. So then, what would be like a more reasonable minimum wage?
Same way that we like figure out things typically. You look at what it costs to live there and hope that we can make a wage that is able to fulfill that.
That is that? I don't think that's how that works.
How do we make minimum wages? We just close our eyes and just point to things and like, that looks good.
It is quite pretty arbitrary. Yeah.
No, you try to correlate a minimum wage to the cost of living in an area. That's like the goal of it for sure.
No, because what then tends to happen is that if you try to do that, but if your economy can sustain that, then that's going to cause inflation, because then prices of goods are then going to increase.
That's different than what the goal of the minimum wage is. Saying minimum wage can cause inflation is an entirely different statement that kind of
okay, yeah, but then that's one of the factors that we have to consider when determining a minimum wage. So then, like, we can't just increase them like to the people who are like, let's increase it to $30 a day in the United States instantly.
When, yeah, like, so of course it's just as like for everything, it's never. This is getting a bit pedantic, but like just to say, like when we think about increasing
we have to consider the consequences, can we not?
Hold on. So if I'm thinking about increasing the minimum wage in the States, and I realize that $15 an hour is what it would take to make sure that people can survive in the U.S., but we can't change it tomorrow. Yes, that makes sense, right? But there hasn't been any form of changes to the minimum wage in Haiti for a while. I think it might be even longer than the last time that the U.S. did their change in minimum wage. But the difference is at the same time, even if minimum wage raise causes inflation, our money is going through crazy inflation. When I was living in Haiti, it was like 45 gourds to $1, and now it's something like 70, 80 gourds to $1. So people are like, if you think people are upset about the fact that things cost 1.22 times more than when they were a kid, like we're talking about 2 times more than when they were like 5 years ago. So like it's just absolutely unfeasible right now. And I think that anybody that's going to the U.S. saying yes, we're just going to pay minimum wage, that is like overwhelmingly exploitative, considering how like volatile that their currency is. So it's literally like each like 1 Haitian gourd is essentially a penny, and we have to pay people something like 35 Haitian gourds. Well, let me look it up, because I guess me changing numbers.
Okay. Is it okay if I could respond? All right. So then it seems like it is. You said that it's infeasible to increase the minimum wage. Given the information that you said, I agree. And so then wouldn't one of the solutions to solving that problem be increasing the number of jobs in Haiti so that the economy is stronger to then sustain an increase in the minimum wage?
Sorry, I was just looking it up. Apparently, it's 550 Haitian gourds right now, and I think it's like one Haitian gourd is about 1 U.S. cent. But yes, could you please re-ask that?
Yeah. So, given the information that you said, I agree that it is infeasible to increase the minimum wage in Haiti. So then, it is not
infeasible to raise the minimum wage in Haiti. Same way that Fluff was saying that his family is like a 1%er in Haiti. My family are 1%ers in Haiti. I see how absolutely obnoxiously that like 1%ers are using their money. It's ridiculous. Like one of my family members runs is like a cardboard manufacturer in Haiti, and he has a 4-story home, yet like people like his own, like one of our maids had to like take $50 out of my mom's purse to be able to pay for like medication for his kid, and he asked my uncle's like, I don't know, it sounds like a you problem, and that's what the result of that is. Like, it's not like 1%ers. in Haiti like don't have enough money to raise wages. Like we pay our maids something like $100 a month. I think even less now that the Haitian gourd has tanked. So like yeah, these aren't real issues of yeah, we can't raise minimum wages because the 1% doesn't have enough to pay. It's that they don't want to pay. Nobody will be
what's
starving.
the percentage of businesses owned by the 1% in Haiti?
Majority? I mean, I don't know. I don't have
Is
these
it the major? Okay, I would assume that most businesses in Haiti would not be owned by the 1%.
So who would it be owned by?
Probably the middle class. Or
We
what
don't
would
ha-
be considered the middle
I'm
class?
sorry,
Might as
no-
well just be like the lower class.
There isn't much of a middle class.
There's what middle
So it'd just be
class?
the lower class. So it'd just be the lower class. Okay.
I mean, if
forgive
you're what? No,
No.
Okay, like what? If we're talking about Haitian
I
businesses,
me. I mean, wait,
unless
is there no concept of small businesses in Haiti? Am I
So,
mistaken?
like
Flip,
hair
can you-
salons, but like that's not what's
As
actually.
much as I love this, okay, I think let's like I get there's logistical complications to anything, especially things that are a bit idealistic, but I feel like this idea. I've also got another thing I'm gonna add after I say this. Is that I feel it's a little bit.
What? No, this
kind
guy
of
doesn't know literally anything about Haiti.
difficult
I
to
can't. What am I
imagine that,
doing?
like,
We're
if the minimum wage in Haiti is incredibly it's basically just poverty work. That adding more poverty work is going to like make the lives of Haitians better. Like it's kind of like it's not if it more of not enough.
yeah,
I
like maybe
struggle
in
to
the U.S.
imagine
Like I don't know.
is going to be anyone's
not
going to
everywhere is
yes,
America.
this
Get
is
your head
great.
out of your ass.
I
What?
also wanted to add that.
Are you talking about like corner
somebody
stores?
was talking
Sure, the
about,
corner store is
natural
a
disasters
small
and
business owner, but like
and
what?
Hispaniola, like at the beginning, I know we talked about that, and I ended up double checking. There's a very unique fault line that goes just through the southern part of Haiti, where it happens to be like
Literally.
the most densely populated.
He literally
And so,
doesn't.
because I remember, because I was thinking, like, I've never heard any of my family members ever talk about an earthquake in Dominican Republic. It's because
Where
the
am
fault
I?
lines go through areas that are not densely populated and aren't even close to Santo Domingo. Because the fault lines, like, are the other fault line in the Dominican Republic is on the very top.
Yes.
And so Haiti has
Oh,
to deal with like a
yes.
constant barrage of
More
earthquakes,
perfect union. You were so right. No,
hurricanes.
this is actually an
and
issue.
then they have to
I
build things that can both withstand both, and also
Woo-wee!
like the political
Oh,
disability
dog.
makes it very difficult to like get proper.
Yeah,
ratings
yeah.
On top of
It's
that.
super
Like,
easy.
that's just kind of like
do you know how many
from
fucking
earlier.
laborers I have
It
as a
just-
bottom
I kind
90
of feel like Kat's
percenter?
just saying like I want jobs where Haitians can live, like live, like, and not be extremely impoverished. And it kind of feels it's like you're making her like get really specific, but I feel like she's not saying like it's going like everyone's gonna be rich or everyone's
Yeah.
gonna be middle class. But it's kind of like when you get a bit more specific, it kind of feels like it's like, ho, you silly girl, like you silly Billy, like you really think like it's gonna happen that easily? Like, and I know that's not what you mean, but I just kind of feel like this might be a difficult conversation to have on the fly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll grant you that.
Yeah,
It's just that like if I can't like get these specifics, and I would accept if like anybody says like, no, this is just my belief, I just want things to be better, and like any way to like achieve that, sure. But then it feels like when I do propose some ways to try to achieve that, it gets knocked down. It's not good enough. Like, you know what I mean? Is that like it's
Mhm.
not that
Well,
like I'm
just-
asking these questions. I'm asking these questions in order to like give me a sense of direction of what I can propose that Katarana might like. You know what I
well,
mean?
just imagine that we're in Congress. I'm Sanders, and you're like Rand Paul, and this is us having a conversation. I'm not like it. I don't necessarily need to like always compromise, and not everything that you propose is going to be like good for me. But eventually, like something happens, right? So I mean, just because I don't
yeah,
agree.
but then like
But I think a lot of it also just comes from like perhaps like a little bit of a lack of understanding of like what the Haitian climate looks like. Because like right now when you said like, oh, so it's the poor people that own stuff in Haiti, I'm like, what? No, No,
All right, I'm looking this up.
because okay, so Haiti, somebody had sent it for me. Haiti is
Okay.
in fact the most unequal country in Latin America and the Caribbean. The richest 20% of the population holds more than 64% of all of its total wealth, while the poorest 20% hardly hold 1%.
But I know I'm asking about business ownership, not wealth.
Are they not poor?
Because okay, so here's the thing. Okay, so while there could be still a wealth disparity, while a large majority of the businesses still being owned by people who are not well-to-do, and so then imposing a minimum wage on them will affect them. So like it's the same argument here in the United States. When you will often hear that when you increase a minimum wage, you're not only going to be targeting the Amazons and the Apples and the Microsofts. You're also going to be targeting small businesses
But
who are
I
on
just
Main Street. They're just
so
like
but
a pop
but
and
this is the
mom
thing.
shop.
Like we don't have mom pop shop in Haiti, right? There is no mom pop shop. There is no small business that exists in Pétionville, which is like the shoppers area that is not going to be owned by a 1%er. If you can afford property to sell things in Pétionville, you are a 1%er. I do not know a single person that owns any form of business in Pétionville that is not a 1%er. Maybe if we're talking about small businesses such as like, you know, the tin snack shop where someone sells Corona and Coca-Cola, but sorry, that's not that this isn't what's
That's
employing
not
the
business?
masses. That's not employing
yeah.
the masses of Haiti. Like
Yeah, I get you.
yeah, like most likely it's going to be what the person's family that's running that. That's not, this isn't what we're talking about. When my family would go and refill up our water to get clean drinking water, it's not like every day I see somebody else doing a shift and someone's like, yep, my shift's almost over. No, it's mostly that person's family that's running that. When it comes to places that are employing places, these are 1%ers that own it. And like that all factories in Haiti are owned by 1%ers. All stores that are actually having shifts are owned 1%ers. All grocery stores 1%ers. We don't have small mom pop come and get like a purse shops.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go to the name because he was holding.
I just want to add. So while you were having this discussion, so someone linked me a paper on the cost of living and wages in Haiti. I was going through it, a few interesting data points. It's based on studying garment workers, the textile industry, minimum wage workers. So apparently the cost of living is more than 4 times higher than the minimum wage and increased by 74% since their last assessment in 2014. It's an organization called the Solidarity Center who published this. Based on the current minimum wage, workers spend more than half, 55% of their take-home pay on transportation to from work and a modest lunch to sustain their labor. So the argument they're making there, they suggest a minimum wage of 1,750 gourds per day, or what would be equivalent to $21 per day. Per day, not per hour. But yeah, it's
sorry, that's brain.
Yeah, no worries. It's just based on cost of living, right? So to ensure like they have a big chart with the costs of plenty of different goods to ensure that people can afford their rent and buy food and necessities. Their argument, and there is an argument for that. Like you aptly pointed out that increasing minimum wage too much in an economy that cannot support it will lead to inflation and distort the economic outcomes. But on the other hand, too low of a minimum wage, creating predatory working conditions, will cause extreme externalities, right? Whether it's losses in education, losses in healthcare, human costs that are extraneous to the numerical economic interactions, but are very, very real for society. So there's also an argument that increasing minimum wage, when you have such extreme disparities between cost of living and the actual earnings, should greatly improve outcomes across society, right?
Yeah, I think there's generally a really huge issue in a country where your average worker will have to go and ask the boss, hey, can you please pay for like my kid's education? Like, and for my family, like we would have the gardener, and the gardener would get paid this amount of money, but then the gardener would say, hey, can you also pay for my kid's school? And that doesn't count as wages. It's the person directly paying for, the kid's school, because my family and everybody else's family across Haiti is not paying their people enough money to basically live off of. And like, when we're talking about transportation costs and stuff in Haiti, like, it's crazy to me if that's using up 55% of people's total wages in the country. Transportation plus lunch, because the cost of money it costs to go and pick up a tap, which is like a pickup truck that everybody just hops in the back of and waits for their stop and hops back out while it's moving in traffic. It costs 25 gourds or 20 gourds or something. It's like that's insane. That means that there's something like absolutely wrong with our labor system, and until those wages are fixed, I just think it's going to be overwhelmingly exploitive to have American businesses come through and say, ooh, you're only paying 550 gourds right now? Sounds good.
I wanna give it to Fluff, and then I kinda wanna wrap it up. But kinda. Fluff, go.
To add context to that, Haiti is the 16th poorest country in the world. Its GDP per capita is $732 as of 2020, and for reference, America's is 63,000 per capita.
More perfect union. We'll talk about it a bit.
Like only less than $100 more than Yemen is currently, and we're talking about literal. Everyone's about to die of famine in Yemen. Like it barely makes more. Haiti barely makes more money than that. Like it's not. When we talk, like, Kat's like trying to explain it because she. What can be difficult is Haiti's so unbelievably poor. You will never, even no matter where you go, unless you go to one of these countries, like one of the 25 poorest countries, you will never experience like poverty on like that level. Like it's beyond fundamental. Like it's
imagine me 15 years old. I step off
and
there.
So like when
going
we talk
to
about like
so crazy.
Economic applications, like that
being
we
there
know,
for a week,
especially in regards to like international relations and like how America works. It's just a different world that goes on down there that I think it makes sense to be a bit defensive of, because everyone, let's be honest, people talk shit about Haiti all the time. Like it's Haiti, especially like right wingers, like people with
Donald Trump.
With more racist agenda. They're like, look at this country. I'll just be direct. Look at this country full of black people. Look what happens when you have a Western country like completely full of black people. Look how shitty Haiti is. It's literally used as that kind of talking point all the time. And so
I've actually heard people say that like Haiti should have just allowed themselves to be in slavery for longer. Perhaps it would have come out better.
Yeah, so you're gonna be defensive as fuck when people talk about your country. Like I obviously don't think Chow meant anything. I think we all realize Chow didn't mean anything. Like he was just like trying to get to logistics and really trying to understand the situation, which I really respect. And I think Kat just also has, nobody wants to hear their country that they care about and the people they care about and love shit talked and like all the time. Like
which panelists? I'm just a panelist on here. I'm not running this.
Get frustrated too.
I was just invited.
So I'm glad that we're all able to come to an understanding to some degree.
Yeah, I found it like really fascinating.
Okay, no problem. I'll see you later, Union. I was going to answer your questions because I think we're almost done, but yeah.
So basically, is there anything around this topic that you really want to discuss?
No,
like a specific thing. Yeah, go ahead.
We touched on all the major things I was thinking of. I think I've finally gotten to satisfy a lot of my curiosity on the differences. The racial stubbornness, I guess, to describe, of Dominican Republic was something that I wasn't very aware of. That's very interesting. But yeah.
Okay. So.
Oh wait. There is one last point, because we did touch on this, but I was very surprised that there was like a literal ethnic cleansing / genocide in Dominican Republic. It was something that I was not like aware of at all. It was just really interesting that it was never brought up in any of like human rights or ethnic cleansing conversations. Doesn't ever seem to be mentioned.
No one cares about us unless it has to do with hurricanes or natural disasters of some sort. Chinchilla, do you mind if I just quickly talk a little bit about some of the additional issues that came out in the 60s?
Uh,
It'll be quick.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Cool. So I guess yeah, as a lot of people have noticed, like there was a divergence in the way that Haiti went in the 60s versus the DR. And yeah, like Haiti used to be a country that people would go to for tourism and such. But I think what really, I guess, cemented the future of Haiti's education system and further brain drain issues was Duvalier's presidency, where he basically went through and was executing middle class and oligarchical families that were openly opposed to his regime. So, it was not a landslide of an election. So that was quite a large amount of people that were opposed to him during his time. So, either a lot of people that held education within the country were executed or had to go into exile. And I guess like that's my familial story is my grandpa was a Supreme Court judge of Haiti. And my grandma was involved in politics, but since they were openly opposed, it was the UN had to basically helicopter them out to Zaire, now known as the Congo, to not have their entire family slaughtered. And it
Yeah,
wouldn't
it's a
have.
little hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so they had to basically be helicoptered out by the UN to Zaire, now known as the Congo, to not be slaughtered. And that was including like all the kids as well, because Duvalier regime did not stop at like the parents, but they would kill off all the children as well. As a result, majority of my family got their education done abroad, though before Haiti did have institutions that were adept at enough to be able to educate people, but now none of the education institutions are good enough for people to actually get their education done. And that has further cemented a lot of different people's destinies outside of Haiti. As a result of that, there became huge pockets across Florida, New York, and Boston of people flooding the Duvalier regime, and a lot of people never returned. And those were people that were all like business owners and doctors and other types of things. But as a result of the way that our dictatorship was upheld, rather than using a nationalist rhetoric in which we say that there's an enemy, we must get rid of the enemy ended up being the own people of the country. And yeah, that was a really major problem.
Okay. Well, thank you for giving that input. I think Elysium appreciated that as well, for picking the topic. That being said, we do this every week. It's called Lip Praxis. It's a show called, and basically we got 3 panelists. Sometimes we have a guest on. So for the guest, Fluff and Katarana, thank you very much for coming on. And I really appreciate it. A lot of passion, of course, when you talk about this topic, because you're talking about your own country. So I do really understand that. Thank you very much. Then we also got Name, Elysium, and Senpai Chow, who are the panelists every week. So thank you guys for coming on as well. I am the host, Chinchilla __. I would appreciate if you guys want to give me a follow for anybody watching anywhere. That being said, also please follow these guys, all these people over here. That being said, before we go off, we always pick like another topic for next week, and not to be like rude, but we do that with the people from the panel because of the fact that Katarana and Fluff are not going to be here in next week, which makes sense, right? So unless you want to be here next week, we can make it happen. But that being said, is there any specific...
We have not had a reoccurring guest. This is a fact, Chinchilla.
Has not yet happened.
We have not had a reoccurring
You've never had a guest that you had on twice?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No,
Not
because
yet.
we Senpai Chow brought this up after I had like one guest invited on. So I think
It's a fact.
so it's like you never had a recurring guest. So
Am I wrong?
well, you're here every week, Chow. So and you're my guest. So there you go.
No,
Dang.
I'm a panelist. That's the classification you gave me. Okay.
Okay.
This is the divide that's going on. And also, is Naaman and I not going? Are we not going to get a closing statement?
I'm gonna actually
you
go
all
in and
wanna do
grab
closing
Dylan as soon as
statements
this
on
is
this
done.
one?
What?
I'm all
What?
set.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
What?
So if
Okay,
anybody
yeah,
wants to see
I got a
Dylan,
couple of things.
Okay,
I
then,
got
then
him.
we're gonna do closing statements in the case, and then afterward we're gonna pick a topic. So let's start off with Elysium for the closing statements.
Oh, no, I'm good. We can hit up with Chow. I'm curious what he has to say.
Yeah, okay. Chow, go
Alright,
ahead,
come on.
and then
Okay.
it's closing statements.
He's gonna
so
be
no
like, "Yo, that
interruptions,
cat
and
bitch, she
also
dumb as
keep it
fuck.
kind
I
of
fucking
brief.
hate that
Don't
dumbass
go
fucking
on 20 minutes
Haitian
and
ass bitch ass."
God damn it. That was totally my plan, okay? Nobody
Yeah.
was going to interrupt me, and I was going to grill everybody.
Ooh, I want to
I
talk
pretty
about
much
all the
was able to
things.
get across all my points
Ooh,
that I
I
wanted
want
to
to talk
talk
about
about.
all
At
the
least my
things.
research was mainly focused on the environmental policies between the Dominican Republic and Haiti that was at least like correlative or could explain the differences in economic situations between Haiti and Dominican Republic. I did not deny any of the other factors that were discussed on this panel, and I also do not want to reduce all the factors down to my own. I think they all have some importance in play. It was really interesting to talk about what would happen, like I guess, like in the second half of the panel, because that was stuff I was largely not prepared for. So I had to do some quick googling in the middle. So
Yeah.
like, according to like what I see in front of me, there are currently no sanctions against Haiti from the United States. There are sanctions from the EU, none from the United
I
Nations.
never said there was.
But that's just right now. There were indeed sanctions in 1992 because of what was going on. No, 1991. Excuse me. What was going on with the election and the coup and the response to that. Katarina is right that sanctions does target or effect. It does affect the population rather than what the intended target, which are most of the time politicians, military leaders, etc. So I would endorse instead targeted sanctions, similar to what the United States has been doing to Myanmar or done to specific Russian actors under the Maginski Act. And according to the State
Should I
Department regarding
should I
the
upload
business
this
practices
on
in
YouTube?
Haiti,
What do you guys think?
I quote, the Haitian government has not established any incentives to encourage responsible business conduct. This does not mean that there are no external foreign businesses in Haiti. There are plenty from multiple countries. This does not stop them, but improvements in that may increase prospects. And regarding the last thing that I want to
I
know
need a
about,
video
which
editor.
is like small businesses or like in Haiti, is like how much of the 1% actually controls the economy in that regard. And
I
according
think
to what
by
I see from the
64%
International
of them
Finance
holding
Corporation,
money,
from the World Bank,
then I guess you
small
can
and
kind of
medium enterprises consist of 80% of total employment. And so it seems like an increase in the minimum wage in Haiti would affect a lot of people or like a lot of businesses would, and then therefore affect a lot of people. That's just like something to consider when thinking about wanting to increase the minimum wage. What
You
are the
know,
consequences because
then
of it?
let's just
Was
continue
that
to
20
have
minutes?
it be
Yeah,
55%
it was.
of
So,
all the total income going
let's go
towards
to
getting
the
to work
next
and
person then, in
eating.
case maybe Fluffy you want to do.
So just like have them
closing
eat shit,
statement.
okay? That's a
Sure,
good
I'll do a
idea.
quick one. Realistically, the differences between Dominican Republic and Haiti are that Dominican Republic wasn't only black people. It was also way more willing to capitulate to economic powers way sooner. It made the deals that it felt it needed to do.
That applies.
It distanced itself from any notion of blackness that focused way more on nationality. It played the game of economics, and that's really and Haiti didn't get to even play the game, and you see the differences.
Okay, thank you. So in that case, let's go to name.
Yeah. First of all, I'm really grateful to you guys, Fluff and Katarana, for being here and like giving your knowledge and experience. I learned. I feel like I learned a lot from listening here and obviously like researching it as well. I've always felt like I don't want to say strange. I've always felt like a connection to Haiti through a specific Haitian author, Franck Etienne, who's one of my favorite writers ever, and I really enjoyed exploring this subject, and I feel like, well, it's something that obviously is completely outside of the scope of the subject, but it's also a country that a lot of beautiful art comes from, and a lot of beautiful things come from there. It's not just a country that's been ruined by hurricanes and dictatorship and
Yup.
and exploitation and all those
I
things.
just
And
want you to know
I
that
felt like
it's not
I'd
just
use
a
my
bunch of
closing statement
huts.
to remind us of that, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. In that case, let's go to Kat.
Okay, hello. Sac passe ma boule, mon cher. Comment vas-tu? Hello, I'm the resident Haitian. And yeah, I think, like, everybody has said, Haiti is very complex. I believe that a lot of its treatment throughout history is this. A lot of the main reason why it's been treated in the way that it has is due to its identity as being the first, Black independent country that was able to revolt against their slave masters. The U.S. was not impressed. Our president wrote a letter to Dessalines. Our president Dessalines sent a letter to Thomas Jefferson to say hello. I have some questions, and he got left on red for being Black. And I think a lot of just the way that a lot of different colonial powers have dealt with Haiti as a nation is abhorrent. I also would like to just throw in that the mistreatment of Haitians is not something that is a past issue. It is a current issue. As recent as 1991, we were able to see Haitian boat people trying to get into the U.S. at the same time as Cubans did, and Cubans were treated substantially better. And what is the reason? What is the difference between your average Cuban and Haitian? You did the math. Xenophobia is very much alive against Haitians, and I think as long as that persists, it's going to be very hard to strike deals that will be free and fair deals, as long as we're still seen as second-class citizens within the world. But nonetheless, our beaches are banging. Our mountains are banging. The soil is red. It's really pretty. I would suggest you go there. Make sure you get a bodyguard, but nonetheless, Haiti is a very beautiful country. And even though I will sit here and doomer pill on this panel until the end of the world, or also known as another 5 minutes, it does not stop the fact that I believe that Haiti is a salvageable country, and I will never stop continuing in the praxis in which I engage to help what is my father's homeland and the country in which I was put in detention for a couple of years. Thank you.
Okay. Then let's go to Elysium.
Okay. No, I'm really happy. Our guests were super cool. I'm happy that they had a lot of
Yeah,
firsthand and like knowledge of the topic, which is actually super cool.
bodyguards are good.
I'm happy. It's been something that's been brought up a bunch of times, so I'm happy to finally have a reason to actually dig into it. And I think it's really interesting how these things play out. And I think I do like one of Katarina's points about how inconsistent, countries' interactions with each other are, and how that gets really weird. And hopefully something we can make better arguments for, to be more consistent, to have better standards that we use to base our geopolitical actions on, so we don't have as many biases or as many people left out, or there's as many tragedies out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. That was a lot of kumbaya, like no, just kidding. Let's all hold hands, guys.
Look, sometimes I'm
And
nice.
then,
Okay.
yeah, no, just kidding. For
Yeah,
next week
Elysium.
topic.
I let you
It's
go
always
this
just
week.
nice to have.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, for next week topics, like, do you guys have any suggestion on what the topic should be?
I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Thank you guys for having me. It
Yeah.
was really fun.
I'm gonna
Alright,
follow
bye.
him because that's my bodyguard.
Who?
See you
The
guys.
VTuber.
Bye.
It was a tag team all along.
It was always a tag team. I'm sorry. Bonjour. Comment vas-tu? C'est moi. Cat. I'm gonna go quickly grab.